All right, with Tommy sat down, we will go ahead and have our chaplain prayer. And let's see. Oh, yes, come on forward, Gary.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, now I feel better. Giving honor to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, to our Honorable Mayor, Brenda Gunter, to the esteemed members of the City Council, and to all department heads and everyone that's here. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this City Council meeting this morning. Let's pray. Father in heaven, in the name of Jesus, we bow before you, the author and finisher of our faith, to say thank you for another day that you have made. We thank you for your grace and your mercy and all that you have done. But now, Lord, it is time to take care of the business of the city. And therefore, we beseech you for wisdom and for knowledge and understanding. I pray, God, that you bless everyone here, and that, God, what we're about to do in this place will glorify you. We pray that your will be done, and we pray that you bless the city of San Angelo, and that all of us coming together will handle the business of the city in a way that will honor you. This we pray in Jesus' name. Let everybody say amen.
Amen.
All right.
Would you just wait a second? Now, Gary retired last Friday, so there was a ceremony celebrating his retirement. So congratulations on
you,
that.
Mayor.
You know, I was there. I was just 2 hours.
Oh, okay. I heard that. I heard
Yeah.
that they missed the
Yeah.
date. And yes, thank you so much. It's been an honor to serve in the federal service with the Secret Service, the Homeland Security, and now the Air Force. And now I'm here to give you more of my time as a chaplain with the city of
You're a
San
blessing
Angelo.
to the city, so thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
God bless.
And now we will have our pledges. I have Ivy Dill and Willow Dill coming forward to help us do the pledges this morning. Ivy is a 6th grader, and Willow is a 3rd grader. And look how beautiful you look this morning. Okay, we're going to turn, and we're going to start with this one, okay?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Today is going to be a city council meeting full of proclamations, so everybody sit down, relax, and we're going to present 7 of these today. So let me also warn you all, if you're nervous about me having a cold, it's hay fever, so you're not going to catch a cold from me, so don't worry about shaking my hand. I'm sanitary, and and you won't catch it. We are going to start off with a proclamation as National Asian Pacific Heritage Month. So would those of you coming here to receive this proclamation, please come forward. We've got all ages here today. That's fabulous. In 1978, Congress proclaimed the first Asian Pacific American Heritage Week to take place in May of 1979, and in 1992 designated May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. This time of year recalls a dark aspect of history. On May 6, 1882, President Arthur signed the Chinese Exclusion Act, preventing Chinese laborers entry to the United States and denying Chinese immigrants a pathway to citizenship. In 1924, the Johnson-Reed Act, known as the Immigration Act of 1924, ended further immigration from Japan. In 1988, Congress passed the Civil Liberties Act, providing that a grave injustice was done to both citizens and permanent resident aliens of Japanese ancestry by the evacuation, relocation, and internment of civilians during World War II. The U.S. Senate in 2011 and the U.S. House in 2012 unanimously condemned the Chinese exclusion laws and affirmed Congress' commitment to preserve the civil rights for all people. Americans who trace their ancestry to Asia and the Pacific Islands have contributed much to our nation and this city with their talents, hard work, and diversity of cultural transitions, languages, and faiths. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as National Asian Pacific Heritage Month in San Angelo, Texas, and encourage our citizens to learn more about the history and rich contributions of Asian Pacific Americans. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Would someone like to come forward and speak? I'm going to hand this over to you, and you can speak. Anyone would like to speak, please do.
Hi, my name is Mimi, and thank you for this extreme honor. And I can say we're all very proud of where we've come from and how far we've gone, and it shows a lot to the town of San Angelo how they honor and respect our culture and they celebrate our diversity, and it just shows how much they want to grow our economy and get us to stay here, and we're very proud and thankful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Anyone else? Martha, did you want to speak? Orlando, the nurses. You're going to do the nurses? Okay. Yes, you want to say a word. Come on. Come on. Get up here. Orlando, come on.
It's a great honor. 30 years ago, we started this organization, and I was the first president and currently the president. I thank the Lord I'm here to witness that.
Yes, yes.
Hug each other, girls.
Forward,
Our next proclamation of May 2019 is as National Safety Council's Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. Now, I saw some of you riding in on motorcycles, so I know you're here. Come on up. Ponderosa MC as members of the Region 5 Texas Confederation of Clubs and Independents in connection with the support of the National Safety Council, TxDOT, and local motorcycle enthusiasts would like to remind all road users that the month of May marks a national recognition of Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. Motorists are reminded of the frequency and seasonal return of motorcycle enthusiasts to Texas's roadways during this month. Due to their smaller size, motorcycles may easily be overlooked in regular traffic flow, and motorists are encouraged to always be aware of motorcycles at intersections when performing lane changes and whenever near or passing other vehicles, including motorcycles. Motorcyclists should always operate their motorcycles in a defensive manner and within the rules of the road. Motorcyclists ask that motorists look twice for motorcycles as they drive, both during Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month and throughout the year. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month in San Angelo, Texas, and encourage everyone to share the road safely. Thank you. Would you like to speak? Yes. Come forward.
Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for recognizing, once again, National Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month is in May. This is what I would like to ask of all of you today. Everybody here that's a male is a son of someone. Many of you are fathers. Many of you are veterans, moms, daughters, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, you name it. The only difference between any of you and people that ride is what we put on us when we ride, and it's for safety purposes. All we ask you to do is when you're out in your vehicles, please just take that extra couple of seconds to look twice for motorcycles, particularly around this time of year, because there's going to be a lot more of us out on the road right now. And whether you realize it or not, West Texas has some great roads to ride on. So you're going to see a lot of motorcycles around. We encourage you, please, just take the time, look twice. We don't want to see any accidents, and we certainly don't want to experience them. All the moms, all the dads, all the veterans, all the brothers, all the sisters, all the nieces, daughters, nephews, sons, they all want to get home safely to their families, and their families want them home safely. So we appreciate you looking twice. Thank you.
All the city managers too.
You need to be down there holding the file.
Our next proclamation of May 2019 is Mental Health Awareness Month. Would all of you who are here to celebrate this please come forward? Good mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being. 1 in 5 people will experience a mental illness at some point in their lives, and 1 in 20 people will develop a serious mental illness. Only 44% of adults and less than 20% of children and adolescents with diagnosable mental health problems receive needed treatment. Prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and there is strong research that animal companionship, humor, spirituality, religion, recreation, social connections, and work-life balance can help all Americans protect their health and well-being. With effective treatment, those individuals with mental health and other chronic health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2019 as National Mental Health Awareness Month in San Angelo, Texas, and encourage all citizens to share the responsibility in promoting mental health wellness.
Thank you, Brenda Gunter, and thank you for allowing us for a few minutes to speak. Mental illness is considered a no casserole illness. When you hear somebody who has cancer or some other illness, what's the first thing we do? Offer to bring them food, right? Or help them clean their house or pick up their kids. But when you hear somebody has severe depression or schizophrenia, what do? We back away. So Mental Health Awareness Month is a time for us to try to stop that stigma and remember that people who have mental illness are sick, just like anybody else with any other illness, and we ask that you take a few minutes, and if you know somebody is sick, to ask them what they need, ask if you can help them, can you bring them dinner, help them clean their house. And there are several amazing organizations in San Angelo that help people with mental health and mental illness, and the San Angelo Clubhouse is one of them, so I invite you to stop by and come check us out and come for lunch. Thank you.
I'm Greg Rowe, Executive Director with MHMR, and just wanted to thank the City of San Angelo and your partnership that you have with MHMR. We couldn't do our services without the city, without the San Angelo Clubhouse, West Texas Counseling Guidance. It takes a partnership and a community to provide these services. Last year, we provided over 3,700 we provided services to over 3,700 people and 39,000 individual services for those individuals, anywhere from case management to counseling, psychiatry, skills training, rehabilitation, and crisis services. So it takes a community, it takes us all to really work together and to make this happen and to make improvements and also work on prevention. So thank you all very much for your support.
Proclamation of May 6th through 12th, 2019 National Nurses Week. So I think we have some people in the audience who would like to come forward and accept this proclamation. Come on up. Registered nurses in the United States constitute our nation's largest healthcare profession. This profession meets the different and emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide range of settings. The American Nurses Association, as the voice for registered nurses in this country, is working to chart a new course for a healthy nation that relies on increasing delivery of primary and preventive health care. The demand for services will be greater than ever because of the aging American population, the continued expansion of life-sustaining technologies, and the explosive growth of home health care services. More qualified registered nurses will be needed in the future to meet the increasingly complex needs of healthcare consumers in this community. The cost-effective, safe, and high-quality healthcare services provided by registered nurses will continue to be an important component of the United States healthcare delivery system in the future. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 6th through May 12th, 2019 as National Nurses Week in San Angelo, Texas, and ask that residents join me in honoring the registered nurses who care for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who would like to accept the proclamation? Okay, would you like to speak, Martha?
I got my notes right here because nurses are well known for their nursing notes. So, good morning to everyone. I'm Martha Ketchum, a registered nurse for over 40 years. Most of them are well spent here in San Angelo. So don't be counting how old I am now. On behalf of all the nurses around the world, most especially here in Texas and in Tom Green County, Concho Valley, my sincerest thanks to our Mayor, Brenda Gunter, our community leaders, and also to the community. National Nurses Week is celebrated annually May the 6th to the 12th. May the 12th being the birthday of Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing. Nurses dispense comfort, compassion, and caring even without a prescription. Based on American Nurses Association, we have 4 million nurses. And so there's 4 million reasons to celebrate today. So nurses will continue caring for today for healthier tomorrow. Thanks again to everyone. God bless to all these nurses that are present here today and those that are not present. Thank you also to the community, and thank you for the great America. Thank you to everybody that's here today. Thank you.
that's what we should do. Why don't we move on up here, and then that way we can, so go ahead and move forward. And we will. Proclamation of May 5th through 11th, 2019 as National Travel and Tourism Week. Diana, are you here? And do you have a group with you? Come on. Team. Travel has a positive effect on Texas and the nation's economic prosperity and image abroad. Travel to and within the United States provides significant economic benefits for the nation, generating more than $2.5 trillion in economic output in 2018, with nearly $1.1 trillion spent directly by travelers. Travel is among the largest private sector employers in the United States, supporting 15.7 million jobs in 2018, including 8.9 million directly in the travel industry and 6.8 million in other industries. Travel is a pillar of economic growth, creating jobs at a faster rate than other sectors. International travel to the United States is the nation's #1 services export. In 2018, travel generated $256 billion in exports, creating a $69 billion trade surplus for the United States. In 2018, domestic and international business travelers spent $327 billion. In 2017, visitors spent more than $200 million in direct spending and $20 million in local and state tax receipts, supporting 3,190 jobs and $70 million in payroll dollars in San Angelo. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 5th through 11th, 2019, as National Travel and Tourism Week in San Angelo, Texas, and urge you to be a tourist in your own town. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, citizens of San Angelo, the City of San Angelo, and the Chamber of Commerce for having the confidence in this wonderful staff here and our efforts in being the destination marketing organization for the City of San Angelo. We love what we do. We love having visitors come in because it does benefit the citizens. If not for visitors, spending in San Angelo, every household would pay an additional $546 in taxes per year. So visitor spending is important to you as well as what we do for a living. So thank you so much. We encourage you, again, to be a tourist in your own town, and you can become ambassadors for us as we go out and bring visitors to the community to support the economy of San Angelo. So thank you very much.
Our next proclamation of May 12th through the 18th, 2019 is National Police Week, and May 15th, 2019 is Peace Officers Memorial Day. So I see you coming forward. Chief Carter. In 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week. This week pays tribute to officers who died in the line of duty. The San Angelo Police Department will have a number of planned events to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Law enforcement agencies in San Angelo and Tom Green County provide vital public services and play an essential role in protecting those in San Angelo and Tom Green County. It is important to recognize their duty of safeguarding life and property, preventing violence and disorder, and guarding the innocent. Now, therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 12th through May 18th, 2019 as National Police Week, and call upon San Angelo citizens to participate in appropriate ceremonies commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who have rendered a dedicated service to their communities. I further call upon all citizens of San Angelo to observe May 15th, 2019 as Police Officers Memorial Day in honor of those peace officers who have lost their lives in the performance of duty.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for acknowledging National Police Week. As stated, it was signed into law in 1962 by John F. Kennedy. It's the week we pay tribute to and the sacrifice and service to those officers, men and women who lost their lives in the line of duty. The first documented officer to lose his life in the line of duty is 1791. Currently, there have been over 21,000 police officers who have been killed in the line of duty. We'll kick off Police Week next Monday, 10 a.m. with a flag raising ceremony, which is open to the public if you'd like to attend. We'll also be unveiling our statue, our base to our new statue, bronze statue. We're blessed to work in a community, San Angelo, who supports first responders, law enforcement and their military. There's other cities that don't have the support that you give us here. As we move forward, I ask that you continue to pray for all first responders, police officers. It seems like there's not a day go by that there's an officer being shot. We're men, we're women, mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. We're just ordinary people trying to protect our community and make it a better place. So as we move forward, Police Week, I ask for special prayers for the Kennedy family and the Padron family and all other loved ones and family members who lost their lives in the line of duty. Thank you.
Our final proclamation of May 18th, 2019 is simply Texas Blues Festival Day, and I know we've got some folks here for that. Up here, scoot on around. The San Angelo and the Simply Texas Blues Festival had their modest beginning in 2019 and have grown yearly from a couple of hundred visitors to a crowd of over 10,000 guests in 2018. The San Angelo Blues Society presents the 11th annual Simply Texas Blues Festival to further its mission of preserving and promoting the blues as a historically relevant art form and promoting local musicians and venues and San Angelo as a blues music oasis. The festival serves several purposes within that mission, namely a competition to select a band and solo or duo act to represent San Angelo at the yearly International Blues Challenge on Memphis's famous Beale Street, a fundraiser for the Society's scholarships to local colleges, and a free, family-friendly concert in historic downtown San Angelo. Their scholarships to local colleges have surpassed $75,000 to date. The festival has brought statewide and national recognition to San Angelo and our music scene, drawing acts from as far as Alaska and Canada, while including our many local musicians. The headliner acts now feature nationally and internationally known blues artists. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 18th, 2019 as Simply Texas Blues Festival Day in San Angelo, Texas, and urge all citizens to support a brighter musical future for our great city. Congratulations. Who would like to accept the proclamation? Alex? Who would like to speak?
Thank you very much, Mayor, City Council, and everybody attending. This is an important thing for, San Angelo. What we do is more than just music. It's community outreach. It's bringing the community together. And this festival is put on by sponsors alone. So all of your sponsorship dollars go directly to the proceeds, pay for the expenses, plus all of these great scholarships for all these very deserving students. So thank you very much.
With the proclamations completed, we will move into our public comment section. So we would ask that all people please turn your cell phones off or on silent. With that, issues or items that are not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have anybody here today that would like to come forward and offer any public comment? We're a silent group this morning. Okay, so we will now move into our consent agenda. At this point, do I have any items that council would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? I'll start with Billy.
Mayor, I don't have any items to pull, but I would like to say a few words, if I could, just in recognition and acknowledgement of our first responders. The timing is incredible that they had a proclamation for Police Week, but the thank you that I want to share is about this time last week, our family was going through a pretty traumatic event. And we had first responders from the fire department and the police department come to a relative's home where the family was in total crisis mode, and the professionalism, the expertise of all of our first responders absolutely helped us not to have a total meltdown as a family. And of course, with things going on the way they were, I wasn't able to get the names of the first responders that were there at my brother-in-law's house. But I just wanted to give them a thanks. And I want to say that while we were in the emergency room, waiting room, 3 police officers walked in, and they were very concerned. They wanted to check on us to see how we were doing. And I was able to get their names. And I just want to thank Officer Hamilton, Officer Barker, and Officer Potts for the care, the compassion, and the concern that they showed. Not only did they do that, but they even prayed with us. And being a pretty spiritual person, that meant a lot to me. And you know, that I was sharing with Daniel yesterday that oftentimes we don't remember the words that people say or that they say to you, but you absolutely remember the way they make you feel. And those police officers coming to check on us made us feel that they were concerned about what happened to us. So I just want to say on behalf of my family, to our first responders, both the fire and the police department, we thank you. And I tell you, we have absolutely the best first responders ever. And they were great to us that day, and you are appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Billy. Lane?
Nothing to pull.
Harry? Tom?
Nothing to pull.
Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Nothing? This is a first.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, we'll move on to our special agenda. And our special agenda is A, administration of oath of office for single-member district representatives 1, 3, and 5, and presentation of certificates of election, oaths administered by Judge Daniel, with presentation made by Mayor Gunter. Come forward. Okay.
That I will faithfully execute
the
duties of the office
of the San Angelo City Council,
Single-Member District 1
Single-Member District 1
of the State of Texas,
of the State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state.
So
help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Okay, so with that, this certificate of election is to certify that Tommy Hebert was duly elected pursuant to resolution number 2019-027, adopted February 26, 2019, canceling the May 4th, 2009 election as City Council member, Single Member District 1 of the City of San Angelo. Go for it.
Thank you.
This certificate of election is to certify that Harry Thomas was duly elected pursuant to resolution number 2019-027, adopted February 26, 2019, canceling the May 4th, 2019 election as City Council member, single member District 3 of the City of San Angelo. Here's your certificate of election. This certificate of election is to certify that Lane Carter was duly elected pursuant to Resolution Number 2019-027, adopted February 26, 2019, canceling the May 4th, 2019 election as City Council member, single member District 5 of the City of San Angelo. Come on.
Thank you. I just want to say it was an honor to serve for the first term, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. Thank you.
So I think at this point, we will allow our new duly elected new city council members to introduce any of their special guests that are in the audience today. Tommy?
I have none, Mayor. Thank you.
Harry?
I have none.
Okay, and Lane?
I have my family with me, my mom and my wife, and my little boy Jackson, who was not here last time, but he was born shortly after I was sworn in for the first term. So I am glad that he is here and they are here with me today.
Now we get to have a small little reception, Kool-Aid or champagne or something back there that looks pretty good from up here. Oh, they call it punch. Yeah, dreaming, just dreaming. So we are going to take a small break. We're in break time. The meeting's been called back to order at 9:37 a.m. We will at this point move into our regular agenda, and we're going to start with Water Utilities presentation containing 1, the consideration of approving the 2019 Water Conservation Plan, and 2, discussion and direction of customer programs. Allison, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Today we'll be going through the Water Conservation Plan and hopefully getting y'all to adopt the 2019 plan. Conservation plans are taken and reviewed and updated at a minimum of every 5 years. The previous plan that was adopted was in September of 2014, so 2019 is at our 5-year update planning year. The plan takes into account new technologies and new best management practices. We'll be going into those in the upcoming slides. But as required by TCEQ and also with our loan commitments with Texas Water Development Board, we're required to submit this water conservation plan to them. With TCEQ, it is every 5 years, and we actually submit this plan to Texas Water Development Board along with a survey every year. As a part of the consent agenda today, you removed the 2014 date and changed to what it is in the bold on this slide as adopted by City Council. So we'll be presenting that to you today, and if there are any revisions that we see in the future, we would come back and present and get you to adopt 2019 Revision 1, Revision 2, or make it the subsequent year if it's not brought back till 2020 or after. I'm going to go through the contents of the water conservation plan. It has a section on the importance of water conservation. This is a new section to the conservation plan from 2014, but it's just a short blurb on why conservation is important to San Angelo. It goes through the history of San Angelo water utilities, our current supplies, geography, those type of things, and then our utility profile, which I want to show to you as we're made up of about 90% customers that are in the residential and multifamily sector. They use about 73% of that of our annual water usage. So we're primarily a residential and multifamily customer base. You can see that 8% of our customers are commercial, but they're using 15% of the water. And you can see that with institutional and industrial. Well, one of the primary goals of the water conservation plan is to not only reduce the summertime peak, but also to meet a GPCD, which is gallons per capita per day goal. In 2000, the city set in a goal. At that time, they were at 185 GPCD, and they wanted to reduce that by 1.2% each year. So that blue line is the goal of what they wanted to achieve. And as you can see, since 2005, we've been exceeding that goal. In years like 2016, where it was really wet, we had a very low GPCD. And so you can see after that heavy rainfall event, we have creeped back up to 118, but we're still meeting the goal that the city has established. A part of the plan also establishes goals in the out years, so 2020 and 2025. The goal is 140 and 137 GPCD. Even in 2015, we're exceeding that goal today. So San Angelo has done a great job of conserving. All of our customers take that to heart. But we want to keep the mindset, and so we still project out and want to make sure that we are still meeting our goals. The next parts of the conservation plan are the ongoing best management practices, proposed water conservation programs, our wholesale customer conservation, and our drought contingency plan. I want to make sure that I highlight that the drought contingency plan is the drought level 1, 2, and 3 triggers, those watering schedules in each of those. And I want to say that we're not proposing any changes to that section of the conservation plan. With that would require, the drought contingency plan is in the ordinance, so that would require ordinance changes as well as conservation plan changes. Okay, so the two that I want to really highlight and I'll be going through are the ongoing best management practices and the proposed water conservation programs in the plan. The ongoing best management practices are system water audits and water loss reports. We do these annually through Texas Water Development Board. I will say that in the past 3 years that our water loss has been below 10%, which is really, really good. Metering of all new connections and retrofitting of existing connections. That section of the plan really highlights that we actively meter every customer, every fire hydrant. We try to make sure that we're accounting for water in all aspects and that the meter itself that's being provided to that customer is of the right sizing. The new one that we've implemented since the 2014 is the automated meter reading proactive leak investigation. Long title for saying that at the beginning of each month, our customer service team pulls out a cycle route. They'll start with cycle route 1 and work through the next month it'll be cycle route 2. But they pull leak reports based out of our AMR system, and they start proactively calling those customers that have a continuous leak showing on their meter and give them a heads up saying, hey, it appears you have a leak. Are you doing any sort of outdoor watering? Have you checked your toilets? And kind of walk through some proactive steps that they may want to kind of audit their own home to see if they can find that leak. We also, since 2014, have undergone a rate increase. And so the water conservation pricing, as I talked about, we have the largest sector of our customers are residential, and in the residential class, how we bill them is by a tiered rate structure. So as they use more, the price per 1,000 gallon goes up, and that does incentivize conservation. And then there's the section of the plan of the prohibition of wasting water. This includes that 150 feet of water not going down the curb or gutter. It talks about don't be watering the sidewalks, the streets, those type of things, broken sprinkler heads, just best management practices in regards to that.
Allison?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Billy.
I'm afraid I'll forget this if I don't ask it now, but the automated preventive leak investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
What triggers it to look as though someone may have a leak?
So the meters that we have installed at everybody's connection, they take meter readings every 15 minutes, and then at midnight each night they're uploaded to our system. And so what we can see is, for the most part, people do leave their home for more than 15 minutes, or there is usually a 15-minute span in somebody's home where they're not using water, maybe at night when everybody's asleep. But when we see that there is movement through that meter every 15 minutes, more than likely they have a leak. Water consumption for a typical residential home is not being used 24/7 throughout the day. So that is, those customers get flagged in that system as just an ongoing leak, and that's how
Let me say that's true, because they called me last summer and said, you've got a leak, and we would have never seen it because there was no water gathering or any soft space, spot where a lot of water was coming out. But they saw my meter running 24/7 and a lot of water going through there. So because of that phone call, we were alerted to get a plumber and deal with it. We would have never, ever.
What we're trying to do is get somebody before they get the large bill and then realizing they have a leak. So we're trying to take that proactive step in doing that.
Sounds like it works.
It did.
Most of the time it is a leaky toilet, is what we find that customers realize that they don't have.
Mine was an oak tree crushing a line and a swimming pool meter that blew. So, but it showed up.
To continue with the ongoing best management practices, a water conservation coordinator is a part of the plan, and it was a part of the plan in 2014. But in May of 2017, Texas House Bill 1648 required that cities of our size have a water conservation coordinator on staff, and so we do have that. Her name's Maria Padilla. She's right here to help me if y'all ask any super hard questions. And the next ones are public information. We are active in this in terms of it's shown daily what level of conservation, what the restrictions are, how often you can water daily on TV, it's on the radio. And then also Anthony does a great job of promoting conservation through Facebook, Twitter, and those type of outlets. In Channel 17, we've got a lot of good videos pertaining to water conservation. And recently, Maria has done some outreach in terms of Earth Day at the county library and those type of things. So we try to provide as much public information as we can on conservation. School education is something that we're trying to be more proactive on. It is kind of hard to get in the curriculum of the school system. But our previous conservation coordinator actually did some presentations at Region 15 and did some outreach with some of the schools. And so we're going to be trying to make more proactive steps regarding school education. But nonetheless, we do. I have met with several GT students that are wanting to do a special project on water conservation. And so we've done that in conjunction with the Parks Department and kind of shown them around our city facilities and what we're actively doing. And the last one is parks conservation. And the Parks Department has developed water conservation policies and procedures that cover all irrigated parks. The parks manager implements a regimen that uses only the amount of water necessary to maintain viability of those parks. And also, since the 2014 plan, we've had the Kirby Park rainwater harvesting installation and the Bosque rainwater harvesting system. And so those have been updated in the plan.
Does that park conservation plan allow for the city to maintain watering of their parks even though we might be in a drought? Because obviously parks create a great quality of life for the city. We invest a lot in our parks.
Currently, the parks, this section of the plan requires that they still abide by the ordinance, which is their current policy today. I think that we can look at certain aspects of that, but for the most part, they follow the same conservation restrictions as anybody else in the city.
We'd like to look at that.
So that wraps up the ongoing best management practices, and then the next part of the plan is the proposed water conservation programs. These are lengthy in the plan, but I'll just kind of hit approximately implementing these programs, how many customers we could affect, and the potential water savings with each one of these. The showerhead and aerator distribution, I'll be talking more about this one here in a little bit, but we could potentially reach about 3,000 customers with an approximate water savings of 45 million gallons of water each year. That's not only shower heads, but you're talking about aerators for the bathroom sinks as well as the kitchen sink to achieve that type of conservation savings. The high efficiency toilet rebate program is one that we've also talked about before. I want to mention in the plan we found a number that was incorrect because we were looking at possibly reaching 1,000 customers with that program each year. The plan called out 147 million gallons of savings. That's actually 16 million. The 147 million gallon savings would be if we reached 9,200 customers each year. So we'll be making that correction to be more in line with what the program would entail. High efficiency washer rebate program would encourage people to buy efficient washing machines. It's not like toilets. Toilets today, you buy an efficient toilet. If you're buying one today, and so it'd be only the retrofitting of old toilets. But with a washing machine, they do have Energy Star and water saving washing machines, but it's not required for those vendors to have that type of efficiencies built into their product. And with this program, we would potentially bridge half the gap between the inefficient washing machine with the efficient one. You could possibly reach 2,100 people annually with this program at about 12 million gallons of savings each year. Landscape irrigation conservation incentives. This one can be done in a whole host of different ways in terms of xeriscaping, requiring at least the yard or the available acreage around the home to be less than 50% turf. You could also look at drip irrigation, mulching of flower beds. There's a lot of different ways of providing conservation incentives for outdoor landscaping. But with that one, they potentially estimate 4.5 million gallons of savings annually. Water surveys for single-family and multifamily customers. This is one where we would have somebody go in to audit individuals' homes who would likely start with very large residential users and talk about how, where do they use water, kind of go through everything in the home to exterior of the home and try to start educating customers on a one-on-one basis and targeting their usage and trying to minimize those.
Can we stay on that screen for just a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, one of the things that obviously this reflects is that perhaps the cost of replacing a toilet or the cost of a washing machine is somewhat expensive, so a lot of people wouldn't be able to afford to do those programs. On the other hand, it would seem that if we take a look at a growing industry of new homes, new apartments, remodels, that it would be a perfect time to try to incentivize or convince people that they need to make sure these high efficiency toilets or efficient washing machines or the gray water irrigation systems be inclusive in all new development. Because when you have to go backwards and replace those things, some people are not going to have the financial ability to do that. Even shower heads aren't necessarily always compatible with existing plumbing. So I think we're asking for a lot of expensive plumbing work in many cases that many people aren't going to be willing to sign up to do. So the efficiency of those programs would seem to be a little bit limited.
And what these proposed conservation programs, none of them put them in play and into motion. They are all just potential aspects for the city to explore. I know in the second part of this discussion we'll be talking about customer programs, and I'll go ahead and talk about that. We will be requesting that we move ahead with the showerhead and aerator distribution type program versus any of these other ones. Just as a good segue, it's like you said, easier for customers to install a shower head versus some of our customers may not be able to install a toilet or afford a plumber to do so. And so it's a good segue. It also provides the most savings for minimal costs compared to some of the other programs. And so we'll be, I guess, requesting that we look more at the showerhead and aerator distribution. But I do think what you're saying as far as new home installation, I think that we can kind of talk about retrofitting of existing homes and then also talk about potential programs that implement on new construction side.
Because I think the other thing that has happened is gray water today is much reduced in cost than it was when it was originally initiated. So
That's
I think
actually
it's
on this, I was about to say, it is a
good.
proposed conservation program.
So it's a much lesser cost than it used to be. So I think there's some real interest here.
And so on this next slide of proposed conservation programs, one is rainwater harvesting. I think y'all are all familiar with what that would look like. But they estimated if a customer did a minimum barrel size of 55 gallons, and we could reach possibly 1,000 customers with doing a $25 rebate, we'd be looking at only 1.1 million gallons of savings. Just to put that back in perspective, the showerhead and aerator is 45 million gallons. Gray water, as we talked about, it's not in the conservation plan, it doesn't talk about a specific rebate that we would be implementing to those customers, but it is a program that we could look at and talking, with that industry about what dollar amount would incentivize new home construction to go that route. The conservation programs for industrial, commercial, and institutional accounts, what we would be doing there is meeting with our large-scale industrial, commercial, and institutional accounts. Maybe it's the hospitals, maybe it's the packing plants, maybe it's Ethicon. Those type of industries, and talking with them about how they can, on a large-scale basis, reduce their water consumption. And the plan calls out that we would rebate them $300 for every acre-foot of water savings they had annually, but that is targeting a very specific class, and I believe it was about 8% of our annual water usage in that category.
Not if you combine all three.
Oh, yeah, not if you combine all three. Yes, sorry, I was looking at.
Yeah, because if you combine industrial,
I think it's
commercial,
about 27.
and institutional, it's 27%,
Yes.
but it's 27% large users. So, and they tend to have the largest roofs and other things. So.
Mm-hmm. And the last proposed water conservation program is partnership with nonprofits. This is a new one compared to the 2014 plan. And we wanted to make sure we include it because we do get approached every once in a while from the Extension Service, Texas A&M AgriLife, Master Gardeners Association, those type of things. And so if they were to develop a program here in San Angelo that they felt would be very effective and could help it with our customer base, we would want to, maybe assist with that program.
Name something they would do.
If they were to maybe do some sort of irrigation of a certain area. I know that we have the Bluffs tank that we had recently done with Conserve a Spot. So if they wanted to adopt something similar to that, we could maybe provide some sort of funding to assist with that program. Most of it's going to be education-based.
Yeah, because I don't see how that would reduce usage.
No, it would just be
simply,
educating conservation.
Yeah.
So with that, that is the part one of this presentation. So it is, would like to have y'all's recommendation to approve the 2019 Water Conservation Plan, and I will follow up that with submittals to Texas Water Development Board.
Let me see if there's some questions from council concerning your presentation, Tommy.
I have one, Allison. You may have mentioned it, and I may just have missed it. But in the targets and goals, it looked to me like we are still going to work with the 2014 targets and goals, the reducing the consumption.
Yes, we are in line. We're keeping with the 1.2% reduction as the goal each year for the out years.
Does there
Starting
become a
into
point when 1.2 gets you too low that it's not reasonable? I mean, at some point.
That's one question, but we're already maybe not far below, but below those targets that were set in 2014.
Correct.
Do we need to readjust? At this point, I wouldn't know whether up or down, but maybe down, but do we need to readjust our goals since we have been as much below those as we have since 2014?
Well, and also, Allison, I assume that that is also relative to the amount of water rain that we get, because that has probably
It was obvious in
biggest
16,
issue.
yes. So, but do we need to readjust those for any reason?
I would say that if anything, we could adjust them down to the state goals, but they're still about that that range of 137, 140.
Okay.
So San Angelo is already, yes, we are exceeding those goals, but much more from what they're already conserving today is, I don't see how that would. It is possible for everybody to conserve a little bit more, but we're already well below the state average and one of the lowest per capita or GPCD cities in the state of Texas.
Well, to Tommy's point with that, if we're already that low, how much lower
I
can
think
we
we're
go?
looking at more of maintaining.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Allison.
Yes, and Harry, you had a question or comment?
Well, I didn't until Tommy spoke. That he triggered something.
So, yeah, blame it on Tommy.
I guess we need to make sure that we're cautious in how we set these goals, since the plan really is going to the TCEQ and the Water Quality Board. We really need to make sure that these goals are realistic, achievable. So, you can take a look at readjusting them since we've been so successful over the last 5 years. But I'd caution that in 2011 and 2012, we didn't have water. So we kind of need to make sure that as we go forward with this, the goals we set are achievable.
You want to go back to that chart real quick, Allison, just so we can re-review that? No, the one you just did before this one, real quick. So we're actually, in 2015, well, we don't have numbers from 2015.
Yes, this is on a 5-year
Yeah,
break.
so-
So I don't have the 2011, but that number, the actual is, well, in 2010, you can see that it went up from 2005. So it is a higher number than.
Do you have, and it's okay if you don't, but do you have, like in 2018 or something more current than 2015, what our water consumption was?
2018 was this 118.
Yeah.
So since the 2016 rains, we have started inching back up. So what we don't want to see is this to keep going up.
But do we think it's realistic to go lower than 1.2% of 115 or 1.2% lower than 118? In other words, the
No, I
question
don't
mark
think
would
that
be.
is. I don't think that is achievable. I think you are looking at more the 150, 140 range and reducing it the 1.2 from the goal number versus what our actuals are.
Well, I know, but we're significantly under the goal numbers, which is what we want to be, and the citizens have done an incredible job of underutilizing their water relative to our goals. So the question mark is, why are we using the 1.2% of the goal number versus looking at what we're actually doing and saying the following, for example. We believe if we continually set a goal to be at the 118, I'm making this up kind of, but if we could maintain the 118, that would be a really good number. Because do we think we can be at 108 again? Do we think 115? So the goals are great, but reality is more important than the goal, or the actual is more important than that goal number.
I think that we could look at adjusting possibly the goal down, but I wouldn't get too close to the 118, 120 range, just because of depending on what type of year we have, drought or rainfall or no. But we can look at bringing that down from the 140, 150 range down to state goals and those type of things.
So Allison, this is an assumption, but I assume the 155 on the orange line would be 2011?
Yes, it's that 2010, 2011 timeframe.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, Allison may be right, Mayor. We may need to be careful where we actually set the goal, because we will have another year like 2011, 2010, 2011,
Yeah.
2012. We will. It's just a question of when.
It certainly would be nice to say the following, to try to focus on the, because if you look at 2015, 16, 17, and 18, you average those all out, you're going to be somewhere in the 110 number, let's say, 112. So if we said 112 is a good number, can we ask that we try to maintain a 112? You might not want to set the goal there, but keeping the goal up at 151 when we're so significantly underperform. I shouldn't say underperforming, because it's a good thing. We performed well against our goal.
Yes, we are
but is the
performing
goal
well.
too high relative? And it's okay. It's
And I would look at possibly the
water, but-
125 GPCD range, because that is, I think the state goal is 140, but they have looked at adjusting that down to 125, and so we could adopt more in line with that.
Mayor, and if I may, there's also a delicate balance between, we do want the conservation, but we also realize that we have to pay for infrastructure as well.
I know.
So we are dependent on those revenues. We want to bring that conservation as low as we possibly can, but not hampering our ability to replace infrastructure in the future, because it came down so low that now we're having to look at our revenues and fees and adjust those as well.
I know, and I respect that, but I also respect the fact that the goals have been significant, or much higher than what we're actually doing. So if we're trying to project dollars in the water fund to pay for infrastructure, we're using the goal numbers as the numbers we'd like to achieve to finance infrastructure. We're not hitting those numbers, we're hitting the lower numbers, so the dollars are going to be lower projecting wise in terms of infrastructure dollars. That's all I'm saying. And obviously, we're going to use as little as we need. So, but again, the goal is a high number relative to what we're producing. That's all. And we're not going to. Yes, Harry.
I'd like some clarification from Allison and Michael, because I don't think we're setting our financial goals at the 149. We're not looking at projected income at that. That's not what we're doing. Is that correct, Michael?
That is correct. We've been over a 5-year average. When we did the rate plan, they looked at not just one particular year, or they didn't even look at what these goals are. They were looking at the city's 5-year average over that time, and they did basically a baseline or an average usage over those 5 years, and that's how we budget in the water
Which would be
fund.
those lower numbers.
Yes, which will be those lower numbers.
And that, we're not going to change your chart. I just am saying the following. We look like we're heroes because we're significantly under our goal, but the reality is the actual numbers are more in line with what we need to continually be at, not the goal numbers, because our goal isn't to hit the goal.
Correct.
Our goal is to underachieve the goal.
Right.
That's all.
Mayor,
Yes,
I have a
Julie.
question, Allison. I don't want to be a naysayer, but if we lower our goal to 112, and we have a year like 2011 or 2010 where our actual is at 155, is there any type of penalty from TCEQ for being that much above, or any penalty anywhere for being that much above? We were not able to achieve that 112 goal, and we're significantly above it. What's the ramification?
I don't know that there's
of
a penalty, like a dollar figure, a penalty or any type of those things, but they will be coming to you and saying, are you implementing your conservation plan? Are you doing other things to proactively get back to, if you said 112? So they will be more so directing you to implement certain parts of your conservation plan, your program, outreach, to somehow get you back down to what your goals are.
Thank you.
Yes, Harry.
I was trying to be quiet on this, but it just didn't happen. Does this particular chart, or the way we set this, the goals and the implementation of the conservation plan, impact when we go for dollars from the water board? I mean, is this part of that application?
Yes, so a
process?
part of the application is making
So we
sure that
really
you
need
have
to-
an updated conservation plan, make sure you're meeting, I don't know that you get dinged,
We don't want to set it too low because.
but it is a part of the
obviously-
evaluation criteria. I do
very
know
good.
that.
You can move forward.
Okay.
We've drugged this out. But thank
Mary,
you
I'm
for
sorry I asked the question.
I'm sorry I had her go back to that screen again. Okay, it started with the screen and then the questions followed. But thank you for, but I just, we want people to conserve. And if we don't want them to think, well, we set it way up here and you were down here, so there's room to use more water. You want to say.
Correct. We want to maintain
our goal
what we
might
are,
be here,
how
but
we
we
are
need to
performing today.
maintain. Yes.
Okay. Before I move on into the next part of the customer programs, if y'all, I would want a vote on number 1 and number 2 separately. And so if this is a good time to do that before I go into the customer programs, or I can go into the next one and then do it all at the end, whatever your
Mayor, I'd
preference
move
is.
we accept the staff recommendation part
Okay,
one.
as a motion, is there a second? And Harry, as a second, is there any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0.
Part 2 is the customer programs. So in October of last year, I came to you and talked about the conservation discounts that we currently have in place. Talked about I was wanting to remove those discounts and then bring back to you customer programs that could come in its place. And I got guidance from y'all that we needed to bring back programs and not just get rid of those without having these to go in its place. So what I'm proposing today, and I'll step back through what the conservation discount does currently, but proposing 3 programs in the conservation discount place. 2 of them are financial assistance programs, and then 1 is a true conservation program that we've already kind of touched on, but it is the showerhead and aerator distribution program. So the current conservation discounts, we've talked about the issues associated with them. They were adopted in 2006, and they were supposed to only total $150,000 annually at that time. Since rate increases and proactive conservation by our customers, we have seen that grow to almost $450,000 or over $450,000 last year. And so it is a very costly program, and it's, in terms of it being a conservation program, it's not a true conservation program. The discounts that we give back to customers are scaled in reverse, and what I mean by that is as you use more up to the 3,000 gallon mark, you get rebated more. So it's not giving that person that uses 1,000 gallons more than the person that uses 3. So in that aspect, it's not promoting conservation. The other part of it is that there are conservation discounts given to for different reasons other than conservation, such as, and I'm not trying to name names, but realtors and those type of people that have a home listed, a residential home that has nobody living in it, but they have services in their name. They are receiving this discount because they are not using water. There's nobody living there. Vacation homes at Lake Nasworthy or just across the city, but those are some of the issues associated with the conservation discount. There is no sign up for this. It's just automatically given in terms of a rebate the following month if you use less than 3,000 gallons or less in the previous month. So what we were going to be proposing is 2 financial assistance programs. They will be affiliated with the Concho Valley Community Action Agency. They will help us administer these. But we're proposing a low-income assistance program and a senior assistance program. Both of them have eligibility requirements that they have to be within 150% of the federal poverty guideline. This is how they administer their current programs. At Concho Valley Community Action Agency, they use this with utility companies such as gas and electric. But this just gives the breakdown of family size and what the annual income has to be at or below for them to qualify for these programs. Just to
go back to that chart, because what you find is the dollar amounts or the annual. Never mind. Go ahead. Forget it. I'm gonna save it.
Okay. So each one, I'll walk through the requirements and how we plan to administer each one. So with the Low Income Assistance Program, this would be completely done by the Concho Valley Community Action Agency. We talked about the eligibility requirements of their income, and it'd be a one-time assistance per customer annually, and it would be on a first-come, first-served basis. And what we would do is we would provide $50,000 to the Action Agency. 10% of that would go to their administrative costs to vet customers and go through the application process. So that would leave about $45,000 annually to customers to be used. The customer could come in, say that they're about to get cut off, or they are delinquent and they just cannot pay their bill and they don't want to be shut off from water. They can go to the Action Agency, be vetted through that program, and then they would help them one time a year. So if a customer comes in February and they need that assistance, they're granted it. They couldn't be granted that assistance again in August, so it works off a calendar year basis. The next one is the Senior Assistance Program, and this is kind of a dual partnership with Concho Valley Community Action Agency and the city. What we would be utilizing the Action Agency for is to vet the individuals for this program. So they would check not only the income, which is the same as the chart previously shown, but also to make sure that they're the 65 years or older. And what they would do is communicate back to us that customer ID at this location is eligible for the elderly or for the senior assistance rates. And what that does is take that volumetric rate in that first tier and reduces that by 50%. So we're looking at a maximum savings of $3.54 annually. I mean, per month, sorry, not annually, monthly. And that is really in line with what we're giving today in terms of conservation discounts. It's in that $3 to $4 range. This would be a 2-year enrollment. So once the customer is enrolled in the program, they would receive those rates for 2 years. And at that time, they would have to go back to the Action Agency and re-enroll and prove income and those type of things. What we would be doing with the cost of this program is paying Concho Valley Community Action Agency $5,000 to basically perform the eligibility checks, and then communicating back to us, and then the rates would be adjusted on that customer's monthly bill. So before I go into the shower head and aerator, I'll happily answer any questions about the financial assistance programs we're proposing.
So just to make sure we're all on the same page, so on the original conservation plan that was approved in 2006, is that when it was? Or
yes, the
like
conservation
that?
discounts.
Yeah. That was not a program, in fact, created to address low income. It was a conservation-based program, not an income conservation plan.
Correct. But what we see today is the individuals receiving that credit. We see both cases, some that are trying to conserve and then some that are using it more as they're a single elderly individual that just receives that discount by the nature of their low usage. But it is more of a financial issue to them whenever we talked about taking the discounts away, that they rely on that $3 and $4. And so what we're trying to do is build a program that meets those.
So they still would benefit in the same way?
Yes, as long as they met
qualified.
Yes,
yeah.
As long as they qualified. But in these programs, or the senior assistance program, isn't a financial incentive. Even if they keep using up to say 10,000 gallons, they're billed at rates the same as another individual. So as they use more water, they still are receiving those rates that are at the higher charges.
Conservation rates are based off of 3 million gallons. 3,000 gallons a month. Because you mentioned the 3,000 a minute ago.
That's the current policy.
Yeah.
If they use 3,000 gallons or less, they get this. They get a discount. And so what this one would do is only allow in that first tier, which is 0 to 2,000 gallons, where they'd get a discount in those first tiers. But even if they continue to use more, they still get this discount if they meet the eligibility requirements.
Okay. Do I have questions from council before we move on to the next slide?
A quick one. If I'm not mistaken, when we talked about this originally, the amount that we're giving for the savings for conservation now, it has exceeded what the cost of the actual treatment of 1,000 gallons of of water is. Is that, did we talk about that, or am
I don't know that we talked about it exceeding the treatment cost, but we were basically saying that they're receiving the first, potentially first 1,000 gallons for free.
Okay.
is how we equated that.
So a customer using 1,000 gallons is getting that 1,000 gallons for free. Their bill is just the base cost.
Yes, because it's 10% of the base cost and volumetric charges, they are ultimately getting that first 1,000 gallons for free, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so then the third and last program would be a true conservation program, and so implementing a showerhead and aerator program and distribution. This is no cost to the residential individuals that want to be a part of this program. We would basically have some sort of form that they would fill out in terms of their customer ID, their location, maybe approximate year their home is built, and we can always assist with those type of things. But try to have a targeted approach, so we're going to some of the older homes in San Angelo to install these retrofits so that we are seeing those savings. But mainly the cost of implementing this program is for the product itself, so buying the showerhead, the aerators, and they come in kits that we can provide to the customer of how to install them, those type of things, and then tracking customers that have received these products, and ultimately we would request that they would install those programs within 30, or install those products within 30 days.
Do new shower heads fit old plumbing? Shower? They do? Okay.
Most of them are pretty standard in terms
Okay.
of where they disconnect and reconnect.
Okay.
So with that, the summary of all programs and associated cost would be to remove the current conservation discounts, the low-income assistance, which would be a $50,000 annual payment to Concho Valley Community Action Agency, the senior assistance program, which has the administrative fee to the Action Agency, but also we would be giving discounts to those senior assistants eligible customers, and then the showerhead and aerator conservation program at approximately $60,000 annually. So with that, this is the recommendation, and if we want to move forward with that, this wouldn't be the last time that you get to have a vote regarding this or these programs. We'd follow it up with the first reading of both the removal of the conservation discounts and the implementation of the senior assistance rates, and we'd have to bring back contracts with Concho Valley Community Action Agency. And then next would be the second reading of those, both removal in addition to the ordinances, possibly in the first meeting of June, and then we could implement these programs starting July 1.
So what we would do today is take a vote to say that we support the recommendation of Part 2. From then, you would start to talk to the partners that we're going to work with.
Yes.
And then bring back to City Council a first read, basically.
Yes, the first reading.
The first reading for
yes.
us to take a vote on.
Yes.
And have public comment on.
Yes.
Basically. Do I have a motion for approving
This is just a
recommendation?
discussion
Oh, wait a
item.
minute.
This is just a discussion item. You wouldn't have to take a vote on it if you just want to give a general consensus of direction for Allison.
I'd say move forward.
Every single, Tom, Harry?
I'd say move forward, but I have one question about the 10%, because it doesn't make sense if you do your 10% off of your base rate. You're getting down into what it actual operating cost is, but if you minimize that 10%.
We'd be removing that 10%.
Yeah.
That
but
is no
if you
longer.
just did that to just the water portion of it, not base rates on that application, how much would that affect it for?
I haven't ran the
clients
numbers
that-
on that one. But there would still be the thought that there would be those discounts going to customers not for a conservation measure,
Right.
but by just the nature of a vacant home and those type of things.
But we wouldn't be in the situation where the 10% is being applied to our operating cost of having the meter and having service there. It would just be applied to the 1,000 to 3,000 gallons. It would cut down on the amount of the discount, but it would still bring us back into the black of.
I don't think that we can do that and do all the other programs that I just implemented, because that would be essentially 4 different, basically
be separating the
expenses
cost
for,
from-
yes. So I think it's either you implement these programs that we just talked about, those three, or we could look at revisions to what we do currently. But I think that you would be reaching, I think, effectively the same kind of end goal.
Just wondering, I'm just wondering about if people aren't going to go through those revisions of trying to meet, if they already have it and they're still using less than 3,000 gallons, but they're not getting any credits.
The question mark
Think
is
about-
identifying conservation, which
It
is
is.
where we started with this, is just because you use 1,000 gallons and you're by yourself doesn't mean you're conserving. It just means there's
Right.
one person in the household, so that's the amount of
It's not conserving, it's
water.
just low usage.
It's just what you use. So the question mark is, if you're going to have a conservation program, you have to be able to monitor what conservation is or isn't.
Mayor, and this is what, as Allison presented, this is exactly what it is. We want to go back to and take a look at and ensure that it is a conservation plan, because the previous one from 2006 really wasn't. You know, so at this point, what Allison has presented truly is a conservation and looking at.
2006 was just the base usage
Yes,
savings
That's
program.
correct, yes, sir.
But really wasn't conservation.
It wasn't, but
Or measured conservation.
especially since it was applied to the base rate.
Billy? Okay, so you have support from council to move forward, and a good presentation and good information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item B, I think I'm passing this down the way. Everybody else is
Get rid of that
coughing now.
cough.
So sorry.
You said you weren't contagious, Mayor.
I
I
know,
don't know
I
what's
said I
going on.
wasn't, but look at what's happening.
Thanks,
Okay, item B, public hearing of first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Traffic Control, Article 10.03, Operation of Motor Vehicles, Division 2, Speed Limits, altering the maximum speed limit on East Avenue D, beginning at the intersection of South Oak Street, extending east to Russ Street. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor and Council. Here this morning before you to present just that. We are proposing reducing the speed limit on East Avenue D on that roadway that bisects Fort Concho from a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit down to a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Basically on the map there, you can kind of see highlighted in red the road segment that we're talking about. And it would just be, like I said, between South Oak Street and Russ Street. That area, it functions, I mean, you can see it bisects Fort Concho right there. It's functioning as a parks and grounds atmosphere. It's a very short section, and when we're looking at the speed limit of 30 miles an hour, and what is currently allowed or accepted in a park atmosphere, that 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is a generally accepted speed when you're talking about the amount of volume and pedestrian impact along a particular roadway within a park
It's not
system.
just a park, it's a tourism
It's a tourism
facility,
and
yeah.
visitor. And when we say park, we're talking about pedestrians and high volumes of pedestrians. And again, there's some of the bullet points that reiterate what currently exists. Bisects Fort Concho, 30 miles per hour, and there is a high volume of pedestrian traffic due to the tourism and the visitors within that particular area there.
But isn't there a portion of it that is 20 miles per hour existing because it's a school zone?
During certain hours, yes, ma'am.
Which is what causes the confusion, because you have a street that is pedestrian tourist park.
Right.
School zone in between, and people not slowing down.
So this would make it much more consistent, much more reliable for traffic and drivers to adhere to. Again, the proposal before you, it's a quick presentation, I know, but it's pretty straightforward. The proposal before you is to amend the ordinance to allow for that particular road segment to be reduced from the speed limit of 30 miles an hour down to 20 miles an hour between South Oaks and Russ Street.
All right. Lane, you have a question or comment?
Flow of traffic during school time, how much is that Avenue D utilized?
It's utilized quite a bit as it currently stands. Again, there's some more studies that we can that we're putting together to actually determine what that flow is and how much of it is school related and non-school related. I know that right there on the backside of Rust Street Ministries, there's an alleyway there that they're utilizing as a driveway, a private drive for drop-off and pickup. So some of those will have to be accommodated, but that 20-mile-an-hour speed zone still allows the access there. It just slows everybody down and gives pedestrians a much, much safer atmosphere to be within.
Looking at the impact of if that possibly was under closure.
Again, we're doing some studies around that. What those studies bring forth will make that determination as to if additional action's needed or what that action may be.
Harry?
Yeah, I think one of the questions I have is Fort Concho kind of is like a number of parks that we've got in the community, and the speed limit in those parks, I believe, is 20 miles an hour. I think to be consistent, because you got so much pedestrian traffic in that particular area, that this makes sense to me. I think it's a safety issue, not only for the children of Fort Concho School, but our visitors that are coming to Fort Concho that have to cross East Avenue D. I think slowing the traffic down will certainly help in a safety standpoint. So I support this.
I'd move approval of staff recommendation.
Is there a second? A second by Harry. Do we have public comment?
Steve Hampton. I travel this street all the time. I've noticed the measurement tools out there, and and before you have the facts in on what the measurements are, you're proceeding with the reduction of speed limits. Like I said, I travel this all the time. The scenarios that have been painted, I do not see. Maybe when we're having a big fort function, which is occasionally, but not all the time. When school is getting out, you have about 6 to 10 cars parked on the curbs, and I can see a reduction at that time when school is being released, and they're parking over there because the street that the school is on is not sufficient for the traffic at that time. So I do not like this speed reduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Item C, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance approving case Z19-05, a rezoning from the low-rise multifamily RM1 zoning district to the general commercial CG zoning district on 2.047 acres located in the 5100 block of West Houston Hart. John, you're on.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is a rezoning request. You can see on the map here, it's a small piece requesting rezoning from RM1, which is a multifamily housing district, to the commercial district. You can see here on our future land use plan, all of this area in red, including the subject tract, is planned long-term for commercial already. So in that way, it's consistent. You can see the current zoning there in orange on the right. It's currently zoned as part of that multifamily housing. But again, the long-term plan would be for all of that to become commercial, which this zoning request would do. Just a couple of pictures in case there are questions. You can see the tract, parts of the tract are not flat, and so some of that will have to be addressed in the development. And you can see there are homes there in the background. Another couple of looks. This is the Houston Hart Expressway off to the right in that picture, and then the Bluffs area back to the back of this. This does fit with our future land use plan, as I mentioned. It is along the freeway frontage road, which also lends itself to either commercial or apartment development, but commercial definitely is acceptable there as well. This has been zoned for apartments since 1997, which has not developed in that area, and so a change to something that might develop on that property is warranted at this time. We did send out our notifications to the surrounding property owners, did not receive any opposition. As I mentioned, you can see here there's that cul-de-sac of homes that would back up to this property. I believe the developers met with those homeowners, and as I said, none of them have expressed any opposition to this. I think they're comfortable with what's being proposed. Staff does recommend approval. The Planning Commission also recommended approval at their April meeting by 5-1 vote. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What was the one vote against it?
I think I might defer to Ms. Jackson if she's still here, but she expressed some concerns about the proximity to those homes, and I think that's my recollection of her opposition.
Okay. Do I have questions from council? Billy?
I don't have any questions, Mayor, but being this is in my district, when I heard about it, I drove over to the cul-de-sac and walked around and looked at, the lay of the land and what it looked like. And John is exactly right. The developers did meet with some of the residents. I don't know that it was all of them on that cul-de-sac, but they were okay. I had a particular interest in observing because I have had a situation where commercial backed up to residential, and it did not work out very well in the long run. So the fact that the developers took time to visit with the residents, see what their concerns were, I appreciated that, and I would make a motion that we approve this zone change.
I'll accept the motion if there's no further questions from council, and there's a second. With that, is there any public comment?
Yes, Steve Hampton. I watched this on the TV while they were evaluating this. There was no mention of how many units they were going to put in there. I don't recall at all. There is going to be a benefit to the excuse me. There's going to be a benefit to the housing, and that the runoff will be under control where maybe it hasn't in the past. There was no mention of traffic pattern. How many units are going to be there? We don't know. We don't know. We don't have measurements.
Well, wait a minute. This is going from, it's taken away the low-rise multifamily to general commercial. So there's no conversation here about apartment complex.
Then I've misunderstood the situation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the rezoning, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0. We will now move into item D, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 12, Planning and Development, Exhibit A, Zoning Ordinance, Section 511, Off-Street Parking Standards, and Section 512, Loading Standards, establishing new standards and revisions to existing standards for parking and loading. John?
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. Let me start off by saying there's a lot in here, and it's in some ways a little bit complicated. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but please stop me if there are particular items that you have questions about. We did run this through the Development Task Force, and of course it did go to the Planning Commission, and we believe we've addressed most of the concerns that were raised. But let me first say that the reason that this all started was this item number 2 here, to reduce the minimum parking requirements. As we review developments, we realize that for a lot of the types of developments, we are requiring too much parking, basically. This is a trend around the country, around the state, cities looking at their parking standards and realizing that for every single business, we don't have to have a huge sea of parking in front of them. And so most of what you'll see today is a reduction in the requirements for parking, although, as I'll mention, there are a few items where we are either increasing the requirement or changing the standards. But again, one of the reasons we have these parking standards is this number 1 here, looking at neighboring properties. We do have issues particularly in areas where older properties were built without sufficient parking, and it does create an issue for either adjacent commercial businesses or adjacent residential neighborhoods where that commercial parking, for example, spills out into other areas and creates concerns. And so that's kind of the reason we have parking standards to begin with, is to ensure that at least most of the parking needs of a business or an office or even homes or apartments are met on the site of that business. The ordinance also does look at spacing, maneuvering, making sure we have adequate fire lanes, those sorts of things. And then another thing we've done in this is looking at more flexibility and more alternatives, and I'll get into some of that as well, ensuring that there are opportunities for either variances or what we call an alternative parking plan to ensure that there is some flexibility built into these standards. So the first I want to talk about when new parking is triggered. Right now, there's no change to the current ordinance. A new building requires parking. Expansion of an existing building, both of these require you to meet parking. But if you're expanding what we're terming a land area, something that doesn't require a building permit, there's no trigger for parking for that. Say a miniature golf course, for example. They're not building a building, but they're geographically expanding the extent, the footprint of that site. This would say that they do have to accommodate parking for that expansion under this proposed ordinance. But for an expansion of less than 25%, they only have to provide parking for the newly expanded area. They don't have to go back and fix any previous substandard parking if it's for a small expansion. Also, no change from our current ordinance. If you're expanding the building, or if a change of occupancy is expanding more than 25%, then the use must comply with full standards. That's no change from today. But if a change of occupancy results in less than 25% new parking requirement, the current ordinance would say you have to completely bring your whole site up to the full parking standards of today. This would say that you only have to meet the new parking for the expansion. So if you're an older business that doesn't meet today's standards, if you change from, say, a retail store to a restaurant, all of a sudden you have to meet all the new parking standards of today. And that's resulted in some businesses not being able to go into a location because they just couldn't meet on that site the new parking standards.
Making sure we understand that there's a huge difference in the downtown business district, because these parking rules are not applicable to the downtown business district.
That's correct,
So-
and that won't change in this ordinance. The central business district businesses are exempt from these parking requirements. That's correct. This ordinance does also propose a parking lot permit. We do not currently have that. Today, if you come in for a building permit, then we look at the parking requirements for that. If for some reason, as I mentioned earlier, you're expanding a use that doesn't trigger a building permit, then we have no ability to review your site for meeting those parking standards. So if you're going through the building permit site plan process, this wouldn't change. It would be just the same as it is today.
If you have a building permit, if you've applied for a building permit and in that permit, you also have already designated the parking, you're not having to pay for a building permit and a parking lot permit.
No,
It's
again,
one permit that would cover the new building and the parking lot attached to that. One permit, one price.
that's correct. Now, and so this parking lot permit would basically only apply if you're not also getting a building permit. It would be for if say you're expanding your parking lot, but without any building expansion, that would trigger this parking lot permit so that we could ensure that the parking spaces are of sufficient size, you've got proper separation, and all of those sorts of things. Parking location, right now we have a provision that says you can provide some of your required parking off-site. It could be on an adjacent property, for example, but it has to be within 400 feet. This basically changes that to 500 feet to give a little bit extra distance there to allow you to count that parking a little bit farther out. We also already have in the ordinance what we call an alternative parking plan, but it does not apply to stacking or loading spaces. Stacking spaces might be a queue at a fast food restaurant, for example. So this expands that alternative parking opportunity for those stacking or loading spaces. Loading would be like for a truck parking for deliveries, that sort of thing. So it basically, again, expands the flexibility that we have to address unique situations. We also looked at our minimum dimensions. This type of parking here, which we call tandem parking, it's basically parallel parking, but on a particular site. Our current ordinance does not technically allow for that and doesn't establish standards for how big those spaces need to be. We've used sort of the flexibility we have in the ordinance to allow for those in some circumstances, but this basically codifies it in the ordinance that those are allowable types of spaces and establishes a standard size for those.
Is that 9 feet by 23 feet? Does that cover an F-350 pickup truck?
It likely would. I mean, it might be tight depending on the length of vehicles, but that's a standard, kind of across-the-board industrial standard for parking spaces that most cities use. So
An 18-wheeler wouldn't be able to use that.
No, and there are going to be larger vehicles that might not fit in those spaces, just like our standard regular space, which is 9 by 18. You'll notice in parking lots, some of those big vehicles stick out quite a bit, but we try to, those standards are basically minimum standards.
I just know if the standards might be different in San Angelo, Texas, because a large number of pickup trucks versus a more urban city where SUVs might be the standard or whatever. So I just want to make sure that when we're doing this, we understand the nature of San Angelo and that accommodates those larger pickups. Not a truck, but pickup.
We believe they do. These are consistent with our peer cities and cities around the state. We know that, if you look at some more urban cities, even in the state or around the country, a lot of cities look at what they call compact spaces that allow for smaller spaces. We've chosen not to pursue that, partly because of the concern you raise of larger vehicles in parking lots.
Can't forget the ball hitch that is accompanied to a truck,
That's
too.
another 6 inches, right?
My knee has sometimes forgotten.
Exactly.
Right now, this is one of the probably one of the bigger changes in the ordinance. Right now, our ordinance says only required parking has to be paved. As we looked at around at some of our peer cities, Abilene, Midland, Wichita Falls, Lubbock, a lot of those cities, all parking, if you're building a parking lot and providing parking, it has to be paved. And so this ordinance proposal would require that as well, not just for the required. So, for example, a Walmart's provide 200 or 300 parking spaces more than what our ordinance would require. Under our current ordinance, only the required parking has to be paved. The rest of it could be dirt, caliche, gravel, even grass. And so this would say if you're building a parking lot for a business, all of the parking you're providing would have to be paved. Also, it would have to be maintained, passable, and drivable. That's basically a way we get a number of complaints about parking lots being pothole filled, hard to drive through. And again, this doesn't mean there are a few cracks in the parking lot. This would be where it's really not drivable or passable. And part of the reason for this is to ensure fire lanes and things are accessible to those emergency vehicles.
We're not going to be in the business of driving through parking lots and making sure that there's no potholes, right?
No, this would only be in a circumstance where it's literally difficult to even drive a vehicle on the parking lot that would trigger that provision.
Yes, sir. Yes, Tommy.
And maybe I missed this. If I did, I apologize. So let's say a big box store comes in and puts in a parking lot. They're only required to have 50 spaces, but there's already 200 spaces there. Who has to maintain those 150? Do they?
Well, if they own the land, if they own the land, they have to.
If it's a normal situation where it's one single lot with the building, they would be responsible for all of it. If it's a shopping center, for example, those typically have agreements among all the shopping center, or the shopping center owner or all the tenants have some responsibility for that.
I was curious, like somewhere like if they lease it, they only lease or purchase to X amount of space, the balance of that area. And as long as you're saying it's covered and taken care of, we're good.
Yeah, it would either be the tenant, or if they're not leasing all of those spaces, somebody owns that land underneath it and they would be responsible.
Are we creating a code enforcement issue here?
We always do with these. I mean,
I
comes
don't,
with all
I
of
don't
them.
believe so. I mean, I don't think the circumstances that we've seen where a parking lot has become basically unusable is pretty rare.
We're not going to be going in there and citing them for.
You know, that's what I asked.
Oh, and this would
Okay.
be primarily.
Say, hey, you got a pothole, we're going to ticket you. We're not. That's what you said.
Right.
We're
I
not
think
doing
primarily it would be if the fire truck or police cannot, get to the structure because the parking lot is so horrible, then it triggers to that level.
that. We don't want to set a different standard for a parking lot than our streets.
We just call that Bell Street.
Just saying.
This ordinance would also require that if they have lighting, it doesn't require that you have parking lot lighting, but if you do, it has to be shielded so that it doesn't create spillover glare and lighting onto adjacent properties. So now the next few slides are about the actual parking requirements, the number of parking spaces required for a particular type of use. So this is just a list of uses with no changes. Single-family, two-family dwellings, schools, which you all reviewed back in 2017. We didn't touch those. We think those are in good shape. Entertainment-oriented facilities and places of public assembly, we thought those were pretty well on track where they need to be. So just a couple pictures of these type of uses where we've proposed decreasing the parking requirements. As I mentioned, most of the uses where we've looked at the parking, we are recommending decreasing those, including apartments, group living, banks and financial institutions. I won't read through all of those, but and just remember, retail, pretty much any shopping business, which is most of the businesses we see, are included under retail. So this list is pretty comprehensive in terms of we didn't look at the percentage of uses across the whole city, but I would say the vast majority of uses would see a decrease in the parking. There are a few uses that it may increase or decrease, just depending on the particular use. A daycare, for example, our current daycare standards are based on the number of employees. That's often difficult, and it's tough for us to go to a business and say, well, how many employees do you have, or how many are you going to have, and if you expand your employment, do you have to put in new parking? So one of the things we try to do in this ordinance is get completely away from any parking standards based on the number of employees, and looking at our peer cities, almost everyone goes by just square footage, floor area, like we do with retail and other uses.
Well, it just seems, and I'm not suggesting we change it, but it would seem odd, like daycares, because there's obviously some significant pickup times and drop-off times that would create a different issue than a manufacturing and warehousing or a fitness center, because I think there's some key hours that people go and do these things. The daycare is just surprised it's in this list, but.
Well, and one of the things we do for daycares is we can count spaces. If they have like a drop-off lane, we can count basically those spots within their drop-off lane as part of some of their required parking.
Some of those are in neighborhoods.
Right. Well, and that's the flip side here is we want to make sure that daycares are providing sufficient space either through parking space, normal parking spaces, or drop-off lanes, so that they're not creating backups into the street and into neighborhoods. So
see, again, it's just odd to have daycares in this list because all the other three, bullet points here are situations, businesses that aren't normally just put into a neighborhood.
Well, and all this list are the list of uses where parking could decrease for that type of use or could increase depending on, so a daycare that's much larger, the building is much larger but has few employees, they might actually be required more parking than they do today. But a daycare that's very small in terms of building footprint but has a lot of employees, that might have less parking requirement. Since we're shifting from number of employees to building square footage, it's one that we couldn't say, well, parking's just increasing or decreasing. It could go both ways, just depending on the particular building. And again, don't forget we have that alternative parking that if there's a very unique situation, a daycare moves into a big building with a gym and it's got a huge amount of space, we always have the ability to take that into account if the parking calculation from the ordinance looks very out of whack compared to other daycares. And so then we have a few uses here where we've actually proposed increasing the parking. Hospitals, hotels, movie theaters, religious institutions, so churches, and then restaurants and bars. Those are ones that we've seen as we've reviewed projects that have come in. We sometimes see these becoming a problem. I will say that in looking at most churches, they are already meeting those standards. Restaurants generally do, but we have had some situations where restaurants have created issues because they don't provide enough. Both the main movie theaters in town meet both the old and the new standards. Hotels is another one that we've seen some issues with. When hotels are full, they're spilling way over into the street and into adjacent areas in some cases.
Good news, the hotels are full.
That's good. And our two major hospitals also meet both our old standards and these proposed new standards, so that's not going to be an issue for them either.
Except when the Avengers plays and then there's no parking.
We want Dunbar. We want
Then we've also, as you mentioned, have suggested a few changes to our stacking and loading standards. We didn't have any standards for pharmacies, so we just lumped them in with banks. The ordinance already has a drive-through standards for banks. We just said pharmacies would have to meet that same standard. We provided some flexibility for multi-lane car washes. Basically, we have a standard today that says a car wash bay has to have so many stacking spaces behind it, but some of these larger ones that have 3 or 4 bays wide don't necessarily need so many stacking spaces behind each one. So as you get larger, the number of spaces behind each bay door can decrease. Also allowed some flexibility behind gasoline pumps similar to the car wash spaces. The more gasoline pumps you have, the fewer spaces behind each one you would need to accommodate queuing. Again, the reason for these are basically to prevent cars from backing up into the street. And then we added a provision right now in commercial areas. If you're adjacent to residential, you have to provide some sort of screening. But if it's across a street, you don't have to. And so this just says if you're going to put like a loading dock for a commercial business that is across the street from residential, you would also have to screen similar to if you backed up not across the street. That is a quick overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to start with Tommy.
No questions.
Tom? Harry?
I'm good.
Lane? And Billy?
No questions, but it is an awful lot to try to digest, even in reading the background material beforehand and then listening to John explain this.
Well, I think over the past couple years, I visited with several people that were really upset about how many parking spots we were requiring them to have in their building, for their building, and they're like, most, they're requiring me 17 spaces. At most, I might have 5 or 6 cars at any given time. So the additional expense for that business to put in all those additional parking spots was huge. And they're empty most of the time. So I think they're bringing this forward with some reductions is a good thing. And I think it's well thought out by type of business. So we better understand certain businesses require different standards because of the nature of their business. So instead of treating everybody like one type of business. So I know they put a lot of work and effort into it. I know I've received a lot of phone calls from people concerned about it, but I also will say the following. Those concerns from those citizens have been addressed in this presentation, so I feel good about it.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that, Mayor, because one of my concerns is I have not had enough time to really go through and think of scenarios in certain situations. So I don't know if what I would be supporting or not supporting the potential impact that it would have on a business. For instance, if you look at where the grill is and that Sprint store and everything,
Right.
it looks like they need some more parking spaces.
Correct.
For that area. So, what impact will this new ordinance have on them?
It won't, because they are an existing business, so you would be grandfathered in. They can't make you add now that you already have, and so.
But that's just an example
It's
of
a
what
good
I'm
example.
saying is it's a lot to take in and to just, get the information for me, and maybe everybody else on the council already had all this information, but for me, to just see it for the first time when I got this agenda, I've just been processing it, so.
No, I think that's a great example of a case where the parking from the beginning was under.
Mayor, if I may as well, next time when we bring it back for second reading, we'll put it on regular agenda for more discussion. So, Billy, in case you have those scenarios that pop up, in the next couple of weeks, we definitely will be prepared to discuss that. So we won't put it on a consent, we'll put it on regular agenda for further discussion.
If you think we need to.
Okay.
But it also can be pulled from consent,
Sure.
consent with additional questions if you have them, so either way.
And that's fine,
Okay.
because the next 2 weeks I'll just go through my what-if scenarios.
Let's leave it on consent, and
Okay,
Billy can pull it or anybody else could pull it if they find additional questions.
I
or
move to approve as
issue.
presented.
In a second, so public comment.
I'm Steve Eustace, and John, and we've worked together on going through this, and I'm generally supportive of a new parking ordinance, but I have a few questions and concerns. I know that we have some flexibility, and I want to just make sure that that's really an opportunity to be flexible, because we have old buildings on North Chadbourn and South Chadbourn. There's no way they can meet parking requirements. And especially older restaurants that may have been closed, if they don't have the land, they don't have the land. We also, my commercial brokerage firm, we were not able to sell a building on North Chadbourn because we were going to have to put a parking lot in the back. It had some gravel back there for parking, but the only way you could get to it was an alley. So my understanding is we're going to have to pave the alley and put in a parking lot, and the estimates for cost were more than what the guy was trying to buy the building for. So there's just some instances that I want to make sure we don't put ourselves in a box. We have another building on Arden Road that...
Well, let's stop. Let's not get,
Okay.
because if you bring up a lot of things, then we'll forget about them. But let's go with the first one. If an existing building, a building is a restaurant, and it closes and a new restaurant goes in there, obviously that land and that building and the parking, I think, would be grandfathered. You can't make what you can't make.
And I don't know.
Let's ask the question.
If it was a restaurant, now if it was not a restaurant and going to a restaurant, then it would trigger that. If it was a restaurant going to a restaurant, it wouldn't unless the original restaurant was closed for more than 12 months. And then they lose any non-conforming grandfathered status, and they would have to come into compliance.
Well, but how could they? I mean, I think it's a good point, because if it's just 12 months, it'd be one thing if it was 5 years, but if it's 12 months, that's pretty soon. And if you have businesses on the left and the right of that building, parking, how do they get more parking? And
Well,
would you not want the restaurant to go in as a new business versus leaving it empty because of this confusion about the parking?
Well, and I would say that applies today. And so this ordinance, on the one hand, doesn't change that, but this ordinance does add that additional flexibility in. So we have an administrative process where I can approve an alternative in a situation like that. If I choose not to do that, they can appeal that to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Separate from that, they also have the ability to just seek a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment for any situation like that. So there's multiple opportunities for flexibility built into this ordinance, and the ordinance proposal that we have for you today actually expands that flexibility beyond what we have today.
Because I think the one thing that was up there was the restaurant and bars would be requiring more parking than before, so that's the one category that would require more, unlike others. And I'm a little concerned about the 12-month thing, but if there's a pathway to a time frame.
Let me add one more thing that would address at least part of Steve's concern. And I thought I had a bullet point. I may have just skipped over it accidentally, but one of the things that we have added here is in that flexibility is to allow on-street spaces to count for some of your required parking. Now, in a situation like North Chadbourn where there's on-street parking, at least the 2 or 3 spots that might be in front of that business, right now we don't count any street parking towards the requirement for a business. This ordinance would allow us to do that. So it provides some additional flexibility there. And that would help in at least a little bit in a situation like that. It wouldn't fix all of what Steve addressed, but I think with the additional flexibility here, it at least gets us closer to where we would want to be.
Okay, next point, Steve, let's talk about it.
And I want to say I'm not opposed to the parking ordinance, and John has been really good. We had a really good working session at planning, and we realized there's just some tough issues that we're not
Well, but you're
sure
in the
how to
business,
solve.
and so some of us that aren't in that business don't think up the issues as you're presenting them. So I think it's good if you present them, we have a chance to talk through them to bring us into the language which we weren't familiar with.
So in an area that is older warehouses, let's say Old Christover Road or out Arden Road, there's a couple of warehouses, it's a fenced yard. So you've got parking and you've got maneuverable loading space, whatever. We've got a lot of those properties that are all weather type surface, or gravel or caliche. My understanding is those are now going to have to be paved. Is that correct?
They would be grandfathered, I assume, number one. So if
here's the thing that happens when you sell real estate. When you sell something that's grandfathered, the new buyer knows if I build on or I change something, I'm going to have to bring all this up to code, and he gets fearful of what's going to happen in the future to him.
Well, that would apply to plumbing codes, electrical codes, fire codes, any business.
So I guess my question is all parking and maneuvering and truck space and everything like that required to be paved, or is there some instances we can use gravel or caliche
Well, I would
surfaces?
think, and this is just me talking, and I'm not John James, but I would think in an industrial commercial area that rules and regulations would be different than they are in a typical Sherwood Way or something. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'll answer it in a couple of different ways. One, in certain circumstances, like Mr. Eustace is talking about, a contractor's yard or an outdoor storage facility, those could still be caliche or gravel. So if it's used for equipment storage, operating trucks for that business, we would consider that part of a contractor's yard that wouldn't have to be paved. But for an area that might be customer or employee parking, that would have to be paved. But in that respect, that's no different than today's ordinance. If one of those businesses, again, normally it would be exempt because it's grandfathered. But if for some reason it wasn't grandfathered and had to meet today's standards, that type of parking, at least the required amount, would have to be paved today. But that excess outdoor storage yard area would not.
Okay.
Mayor,
Thank you.
And if I
Yes,
may as well,
Daniel.
as far as parking for now that there's certain spaces now that aren't required to be paved, The issues that we do face whenever we have those situations where a vehicle or parking is allowed in a certain area that is not paved, of course, the complaints we get is if it's dirt surface, especially around a residential area or around other businesses, is that dirt does kick up. And when it rains, it creates mud conditions, and that mud inevitably ends up on our streets. And that becomes an issue, which can be damaging to our streets, the street sweepers. So on our end, we just want to make sure that we're taking care of that part of it, where it doesn't affect our streets either, and our citizens really with all that kick up of dirt and what have you.
Okay. All right, Steve, next.
So if someone's lacking 2-3 spaces and they can put them in the back of their building, but they have to use the alley to get to those spaces.
I would look for a different property. Just saying.
And then let that building sit there and deteriorate with no
Well, no, but I mean, the
occupants.
point is not, I'm kind of joking, but on the other hand, you know, it's one of the things that if you're a business, you want parking. Hard to have a good business without good parking. So obviously, when you buy a building and you know you're going to need a lot of parking, you're going to want to buy a building with a lot of parking.
So do we have to pave the alley and maintain the alley ourselves if we use it to get to a parking space?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, that under today's ordinance, and this ordinance isn't proposing to change that, if a business wants to use parking, say, in the rear, that they would have to use the alley to access, then the portion of that alley to get to that parking area would have to be paved to the same standard as if you were having a drive aisle that's on the property as part of the parking lot, basically.
I would hope that would be a rare case, one, and again, I suspect, tell me if I'm wrong, that there could be a application for variance on that. Is that correct?
Sure, it's
And
always.
so it wouldn't be a hardcore no. It would be, can we have a variance to allow for that, right? I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking. That's a question, not a statement.
I don't know. I know that variances can happen for various reasons, but one of the variances that's not allowed in most city ordinances, it's too expensive to do that. So just paving an alley, I don't really want to pay it because it's going to cost me $60,000. That's not a good excuse for a variance. So, and I don't know the answer to a lot of these. I just want to make sure that we have some flexibility that, and you've already clarified storage space for contractors, and I want to make sure we understand that maintenance, you know, everybody's got potholes, right?
We all do.
We all do. So I just want to make sure that we're not talking about, you know, and we know when we've got to fix our parking lot and add gravel to it, but I don't want us to be out patrolling.
I already brought that
parking
up a
lot.
minute ago, that we are not going to be in the business of patrolling to find potholes in parking lots. First of all, your insurance company is going to be one of the first persons who brings it up and says if you don't fix it, your insurance policy is canceled. Or if somebody trips in that hole, the insurance company is going to be upset with the liability with that. So there, in that case, you know, most of us have to have insurance that covers our parking lots for all those reasons.
Okay, and that's, John's covered my concern, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? And yes, Steve, I'd rather have a building in effect being used than vacant and deteriorating, to answer your question. That would be my preference. And thank you for making that happen.
I can completely see how Steve's coming, because we don't want to get into it to where we're costing the business owners time and money. So John, can we?
We can't have an ordinance that covers 100% of everything, right?
Yeah, right.
So variances are in effect.
When I think of this, the street that's coming to my mind just constantly is Chadburn. Not the central business district, but in areas where there might be a building that you're trying to sell, and it might have been something in the past where it had a compatible amount of parking for it, and a business wants to go in there, and it might be restaurant to gym or gym to restaurant, but
Well, one of the things you find with parking is a fine if you don't provide enough parking for your customer base, the customer base gets pretty irritated.
And it's going to keep it
And they'll
small.
Keep it small.
It's
So
supply demand.
it's to your benefit to try to have a parking lot that takes care of the number of customers that you think are going to come in. And
So if someone wants a hole-in-the-wall restaurant, just mom and pop, they want to keep it small, so they buy an old building and they want to renovate it, but the parking is insufficient. And they need some parking in the back. Have it case by case.
We have worked with a number of businesses in that exact situation and provided them that flexibility to provide less. I will say we're actively currently looking at a couple of issues, though, where an older building and business does not have sufficient parking, and it's creating a spillover impact on the adjacent business. And so that business's parking lot is being taken up by
It makes them
a
very mad.
competitor next
A lot of
door.
places.
And so that's part of what we're trying to balance here.
Right.
you know, it's typical of many of us who own parking lots.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know.
People parking in your lot that they're not using your business. And, yeah.
And that's why going through a flexible, like an alternative parking, we might be able to look at the surrounding area and make a judgment of whether or not allowing fewer parking spaces in that location would create those spillover effects, which we wouldn't want to do on those adjacent businesses.
Thank you.
Billy and I might have a driving around San Angelo date and go check out
places.
Well, we can't have an ordinance that covers 100%, and so what you try to do is create an ordinance that has flexibility and an ordinance that allows for variances to be used to accommodate existing conditions. Otherwise, we all are going to be non-entrepreneurials because they're going to be so hampered by the rules and regs, and we don't want to do that also. So
I have one question, and I think John's going to probably say that's in the existing ordinance, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Can we use right-of-way as part of our parking? Because I can tell you, up and down Bryant Boulevard, TxDOT's right-of-way extends into those business lots 10 or more feet, and that's part of our parking lot. So when we go to calculate parking, how do we look at that?
well, that's sort of like Sculpture Garden or
The property line or the curb, I mean, there's several.
Yeah, sure.
I got one of them myself.
The current ordinance deals with on-site parking, and so normally we would only count the parking on the site. So if that parking lot has spilled over into the right-of-way, we would normally not count that. Now, having said that, if it's a pre-existing situation, they're grandfathered anyway, and so it really doesn't make a difference. The way to get that counted would be through technically, you can't use the public right-of-way without city council permission. So the way to do that is an encroachment agreement that comes to you all, just like a downtown business that wants to put chairs out for seating in front of the restaurant. They have to come to you all, or to build an awning out into the right-of-way. Similarly, a business can ask to allow parking into the right-of-way, and you all can approve that. If you all did approve that, then we would count that as parking for the site.
Okay, with that, is there any more public comment? With no more public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor of passing this parking, off-street parking standards, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Aye.
With the motion is passed 5-1. Item E is consider ratifying a resolution by the COSA DC Board authorizing the board president or his designee to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with the City of San Angelo relating to infrastructure improvements necessary for platting a 153.007 plus acre portion of the subdivision of Phase 2 of the San Angelo Business and Industrial Park, encompassing a future allocation of up to $4 million. Bob?
Thank you. Bob Schneeman, Economic Development Project Manager. This item is a requirement. Basically, it's providing financial security, if you will, for public improvements, which would be required by any developer who was trying to record a subdivision plat. In our case, because we have a close relationship with the city, we're able to do this with a memorandum of understanding guaranteeing that COSA DC will provide those improvements. So it's basically a memorandum of understanding between the city and COSA DC saying that we will either provide those improvements or require as a condition of sale of any of the property that those improvements be completely put in according to city standards. Again, it's prior to plat, one of the Planning Commission's condition of approval was prior to plat recordation, a memorandum of understanding be approved by the City Council.
Do I have questions for Bob? No.
Yes.
Go ahead, Harry.
Bob, my one question, or kind of an edification for the people that are watching here today, is what do we generally sell land for in the industrial park when we sell it?
Up until now, we've been working in phase one, which has been in existence since 2004. The appraised value has been $25,000 per acre for properties over 5 acres and above, $29,000 per acre for less than 5 acres. We have gotten a new appraisal for 2018, and that appraisal gave us a little wider spread, so between 20 and 30,000 for large acreage tracts, dependent on proximity to the highway system and also whether or not the lots have been cleared. Similarly, the smaller lots, they're now saying less than 5 acres, they would be between 30 and 40,000 per acre. So it is a bump, especially
Those
on the
prices
smaller
per
ones.
acre inclusive of the infrastructure improvements,
That is
or
correct,
in addition to?
Assuming infrastructure is in place. And the high end of that would be a lot that's maybe fronting or very close to the highway and has been cleared already.
I guess the point I was trying to make for the citizens is this investment of $4 million will certainly be paid back very, very quickly if you've got 153 acres that you could potentially sell.
Yes, and if that were not the case, if once we get bids on the actual construction and everything, then obviously we would have to adjust the price per acre up accordingly to cover those additional costs.
Didn't we get a $1.2 million grant to
We
help
did,
pay for this? So when you say
$1.25 million.
How much was it?
$1.25 million.
So of the $4 million, you reduce that by the 1,250, right?
Yes, ma'am. This slide shows that phase 2.1.
Oh, there it is.
The deferred drainage was $1.6 million. That was a cost that we deferred to be able to get AEP onto their property in a timely manner. And then the additional improvement infrastructure would be $2.5 million, $1.25 million of which comes from the Economic Development Administration grant.
Move to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lane. Public comment, please. With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes. We'll move into item F. Consider ratifying COSA DC approval regarding the purchase of a vacant tract of land being 180 plus acres out of J.C. Matthews Abstract 8071, Survey 0178, and being a parcel of property located adjacent to the south right-of-way of FM 2105, approximately 1.5 miles west of the intersection of FM 2105 and Highway 277, and authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute a contract for the purchase of the real estate as presented at $3,000 per acre plus related costs, and to execute all related documents. Bob, you're on.
Thank you. This slide shows the subject property being this site. It is, as the mayor mentioned, about 1.5 miles from Highway 277, which is here, fronting on FM 2105, which is here. The price per acre, I got my, it's 180 acres, plus or minus, and that'll depend on the final survey. That may go up a little bit or down a little bit. The agreed purchase price is $3,000 per acre plus appropriate closing costs, if you will. Other conditions of the sale, mineral rights will be split 50-50 between the seller and COSA DC, with a condition that there be no disturbance of the subject property if in the event of drilling or whatever. And we do have a 90-day inspection period or feasibility period in which we'll be doing the Phase 1 environmental report, getting the survey done, and a few other items. The intended purpose of the property is for a potential commercial and or industrial development.
Do I have questions for Bob?
Move to approve.
Moved, a second?
Second.
Second by Tommy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 6-0. We will move on to public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by deleting Article A 3.011 bus fares and replacing it with Article A 3.011 airport badge fees. Tina?
Good morning, Mayor, Council, Mr. Valenzuela. This is the first agenda item, which is a product of our annual fee review process. And these first couple of slides are just kind of a reminder of why we do have charges for some of the services that we provide. You'll recall that our property tax brings in about 46% of our general fund revenue, sales tax at about 25%, other taxes, including franchise fees, at about 10%, and charges for service at 13%. And so every year we want to review our fees and make sure that we're charging an appropriate cost so that we're not subsidizing the cost of the services that we provide through the property tax, because the property tax was actually put in place to cover the cost of public safety, which is 56% of our general fund budget. And so we just kind of want to start out with that, just kind of a brief reminder of why we have to have charges for some of the services we provide so that we can continue to provide them.
Mayor, and if I may as well, we know that our state legislators, every 2 years, they come into session. This year, they've addressed two of our three top revenue generators, which is property tax revenues and franchise fees, are going to be affected by the end of this session. We know that our franchise fees could be affected as much as $500,000. It's a big hit on the city, and more we have revenues that are eroding off of our general funds because of these such actions. Surprisingly enough, one of our big revenue generators is sales tax revenues. Of course, the state benefits directly from the sales tax revenue, so that's not being affected. But again, we do have property tax revenues, and more than likely franchise fees will be affected. So more so than ever, it's important that we do address our user fees and make sure that they're in line with what our cost is. So with that, thank you.
So, and with that, we'll move into the agenda item that you just read, which is the fees for the airport. This one's pretty straightforward. The general aviation and federal enforcement badge, the current fee is already $45. We're not making any changes to either of these fees. We're just going to implement them into the ordinance at this point. And the second one for airport is the security identification display area badge at $60. Any questions on those? Again, just putting them into the ordinance. They're already the fees that are being charged out there and collected. So.
Okay, I'm going to ask this a lot today. So question mark is the following. What are we trying to achieve? Because if we start off with saying we're not going to change these fees, and yet we look at the cost of service being $85 to $136, and based off of the previous conversation that we have potential losing $500,000, and yet here's one where the cost of service is certainly greater than the proposed fee, and the proposed fee is to stay with the existing fees. So I just need some rationale for this.
Let me tell you what's included in the cost of service for this one. One is the actual background check. We have to pay a fee for that. Two is staff time, administering, and the police officer out at the airport reviewing all those background check information. And three is the actual materials for the cards themselves. And so that's what we've used to calculate this cost of service, and we're happy to discuss any other changes you'd like to make to the fee, certainly.
I just, again, bring up, if we're concerned about fees, we're not changing this fee, and yet we know we're not covering the cost of service, I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Other fees we've discussed was we're trying to get to
Say, I thought we
75%.
discussed in the past, we wanted to get to covering the cost of service.
Yeah.
This doesn't help us move
This
forward
doesn't
on
get
that.
us, this doesn't move us in that direction on this one. So I'm with the mayor. Why are we not
I
doing
think
anything?
the only reason that we didn't propose a higher fee at this point was just because we didn't have it in the ordinance at this point, and so we were addressing that. But again, like I
we're gonna
said,
change the
we're
ordinance,
happy to
change the
discuss
fee.
any other.
Inevitably, this will come back to make an adjustment to get us closer to where our cost should be, so.
Absolutely. If we don't make that change today, it would probably come back
I
next
think
year.
we ought to just do it today. Somebody have a recommendation?
How many of these do we see, Tina? How many of
How
these
many?
badges? Yeah,
Let me see if I have that.
just rough guess.
The volume, Kimberly. $137 of the general aviation and 81 of the security identification.
A sizable amount. So my recommendation is to raise the fee at the same time that we're putting this ordinance in, and my guess is it ought to go from 45 to 60, and from 60 to 75 or 80 is my, somebody else can weigh in on it or have different numbers.
I think that's great.
Well, and then I would say we've requested these fees come back to us either annually or every other year, so I would say raise it today, bring it back to us next year with moving us closer to covering cost of service.
Just like we talked last year about.
Yeah, the ambulance and, yes.
About around the number of 75%. Is that correct?
But do we do, here's the question mark, and again, I'm going to bring it up on almost every one of these.
That was just
Because-
initially, sorry.
I know, but based off of the information and some of the statistics we're given, is we give numbers that say, here's what 100% of the cost is, here's what 75% of it, and how do we get to 75 in 3 years? The problem is if you're only going to get to 75 in 3 years, by the time you get to 3 years, you're not at 75. So I'm not sure how we're approaching this, but statistically, we're missing something.
3 years.
Well,
Start off
Mayor,
with 75%.
Well, or look at it and say that in the 3-year window, you start off in year one, let's say it's $99 difference between fee this year versus 3 years. You add $33 every year so that when you get to year 3, you're at 100%. So you divide the difference between cost of service to proposed fee, divide it by 3, so in year 1, 2, and 3, you get to the 100%. And that's just a thought. I hate the fees. I hate all of this. But if we're having this conversation about money disappearing, issues with it, fees become an important part we don't want to cover with other things. I just think we need to have a strategy on, is our goal to get to 100% in 3 years? Is our goal to get to 75% in 3 years? What's our goal here?
Mayor, if
What
I
were the
may,
numbers that
Go ahead,
you-
Daniel.
if I may, I know that in the past, when revenues or the fees weren't being taken a look at as closely as they are now, years back, these numbers fell way behind. So now what we're looking at is we're playing catch up, and the thought in the past has been, sticker shock. We don't want to go all the way to 100% overnight.
Agreed.
We want to make an adjustment, whether it's in a 2, 3, or 4 year phase out. That's what we want to do. But again, it's just that sticker deal. But we do understand, though, that on our end, we know what it costs to provide the service. And whenever we fall short of the cost to provide that service, it has to be supplemented from somewhere. And that's generally from our general fund. And we know we have a lot of challenges to our general fund when it comes to infrastructure improvements and things that we need to do that are a priority for the city council and for staff as well. So we do want to get closer to that. Unfortunately, in the past, we have fallen way behind right now. We're trying to make up for that without that sticker shock overnight 100% fee adjustment. So we're just asking council to work with us to make those adjustments, phasing it in, and then getting to a point where we are at 100%, Mayor.
Great, so I just want to make sure that we're all in agreement. Are we trying to get to 75%? Are we trying to get to 100%? And based off of that
be 100%.
conversation, makes a difference in terms of whether we down the road support the information or these fees being proposed here. because we need a standard that we work from and a process that is consistent with all fees. My guess is we need to.
I agree.
It's just, Harry.
I'm going to support the mayor on this. We need to get to 100% of what our cost is. We cannot continue these fees at this lesser cost and make every citizen out there be liable for that difference in cost coming out of the general fund. We've got to do that. And I don't care whether we get there in 3 years or 4 years, but we've got to get to the spot where we're not looking at fees every year, because we're going to do this. We're going to spend an hour and a half or 2 hours today looking at fees, and this is not all of them. So let's get to 100%. And if we're going to phase it in 3 years, that's fine. I'm comfortable with that. I would rather move to 60 and 75 or 60 and $80 on these two. So when we come back for the second reading on this, I'd like those fees to change.
Well, for example, on the $45 one, if you said the following, 45 to 60 this year, 60 to 75 in year 2, 75 to 85 in year 3, then in your third year, you're at your cost of service. And so if you take 60 from 136, basically, you're looking at $76. $76 divided by 3 is about $26, $27. So 60 plus 27 is 87, round that up to 90, then 90 plus 27 is...
And another way that we could say that, Mayor, is that we get to 1/3 of the way to 100% each year for the next 3 years.
That was kind of where I'm going.
Yes.
We actually,
Yeah,
I love that idea.
You want to do it in 2.
Well, I think 3 years
3.
makes more sense for everyone, but I think we want that third year to be at our projected cost.
At our projected cost of service.
Is my
Yes.
thought.
Tina stated it correctly.
Yes, and I love that idea because that simplifies the whole fee review process as well. That means we don't have to bring this fee back for 3 more years, and you don't have to talk about it for 3 more years, so.
So I have a question.
Yes, to Billy,
So
please.
at year 3, our cost will be more than it is today as we look at it. So will you do something
We
to
would still
project a cost
reevaluate
increase?
the cost of service every year and get to 1/3 of whatever that cost is for the year.
Well, you could
If we were
also say
directed
on
to
your
do that.
4th year, you'd go back and reevaluate cost of service and then have a strategy
True,
going
we could do
forward.
it that
so
way as
that
well.
there wouldn't be huge, big jumps. And saying that right now you're projecting 3 years out, being at 100%. On year 3, you're going to have to look at year 3 through 6.
I would
Relook
say-
at it. I mean, it's either way.
I would
but-
say, Tina, whatever that works out to, based on what you stated for the second reading, put those numbers in there as whatever that cost of service needs to go to going forward, and apply that, I would say, to all of these.
I would say this would be the new Tina Deersky rule. We're going to get there in 3
3
jumps.
years. But do we want to get to the cost of service in today's
No, your third jump
terms,
is
or
going
do
to be
we want to
what our true cost of
reevaluate
service
it year-
is.
annually? and
Tina,
get
the
to-
cost of service goes up every, I mean,
Right.
there's an adjustment.
That's fine.
It may be on an annual basis that we take a look at that cost of service, but as long
All
as we're
costs will be our
advancing
true
to get to
cost.
100% after the third year, the cost of service may be $87 for the bottom one by the third year. But if we're making that adjustment as we go along, we'll hit 100% no matter what. And it'll be right in line with the cost of service in the third year.
Just don't let us get behind the 8 ball on these.
Okay.
Just don't let, just get us where we need to be, and don't let us get behind the 8 ball.
So if, with that being said, then on the second reading, we'll include years 1, 2, and 3 in your background information, and we will
Right.
ask for your approval to approve that plan.
That would be correct.
And then we'll put language in there that says that we'll update the cost of service on an annual basis.
I think that would be a good standard to
Perfect.
have.
Yes.
Okay,
Great.
great.
Michael,
if
you
I
have a
could-
question?
Yes. What I heard was that the estimates would be updated, and we would move to an uncertain number in those out years. My question is, Teresa, are we able to pass an ordinance today which moves us in the future to a number which will not be known until some future date? That sort of uncertainty, can we?
I don't think there's uncertainty because we know what the number is going to be based on. It's going to be a percentage. And so even though we don't know the actual answer, we know the calculation to get there. So I think that is legitimate.
And how will we ratify or authorize that action in the future if that number is not spelled out in what we pass this year?
One thing that we've had, just mostly Julia and I have had a conversation about bringing forward, and it's something we can discuss, is whether we move this out of the Code of Ordinances and put it into a policy that's adopted by resolution. That way, we could bring it back every year on consent agenda, just shows all of the fees that are being adopted for that year, and it's one reading. It wouldn't be multiple presentations like we do it now, and it certainly wouldn't be 2 readings. So that is an option to do that a little more effectively, but still give the public notice and an opportunity to discuss what's being proposed for each current year.
Is that too big a task to accomplish this year at some point?
Oh, no, it takes 2 readings.
Well,
Be done by the end of June.
Well, I was thinking about finance and what they have to go, because we're ready to get deep into budget real quick, right? So we need to put this issue to bed. When would we bring the ordinances back to convert to a resolution-based fee schedule?
We've done this on some other circumstances where there were policies that were adopted into the Code of Ordinances, and really what happens is the first reading is to remove Appendix A, basically, from the Code of Ordinances, and then on second reading of the removal of Appendix A, we adopt the new policy that just shifts everything into a policy statement.
So can we do that after we've through the budget season? Do that in the fall or
Oh,
winter?
yes. I mean, you can adopt fees underneath ordinances now, and then we can do that after the budget season's over if that's easier. It doesn't, I mean, either way, it's just 2 readings of council.
So it sounds like no matter what the fee is, we all have the agreeance of we're going to start at 75% the initial year. It's year 2, bring it up to whatever 85% of the cost of service.
No, it's 3 equal parts.
3 equal parts.
No,
Three
don't
equal
put
parts.
numbers,
Don't go
don't
to
put numbers
75.
in there. It's 3 equal
Equal
parts.
But at year 3, we want to be at 100% of the
100%.
service. Yeah, it would be.
Let
Third, a
them,
third,
let
and a
them
third
do that.
increase, basically. But there are a couple
With
things.
it,
Go ahead.
with the proposed fee always changing, you don't know what that is going to be. So you put a percentage to it. So if year 2, if cost of service is from $84.73 to $92, you already apply that percentage to that and you get a new number. Instead of doing third and third and third.
100%.
Say again?
Year 3 is 100%.
Right. Because we have 7 fee schedules about to come up, and if we could get through all of those if we set the same standard.
Well,
One
yes.
big old motion, G through M right now.
Yeah, but there are a couple in here that we need to go through because there are issues here. So we can't do it across the board. For example, on the development services planning, the administratively eligible amendment fee, I'm confused on this. Current fee is $195. The proposed fee is $95. The cost of service is $129.
Could we stick with the airport for now, please?
Well, but we can't because we've opened up the conversation to address all fees. We've already done that.
But on the agenda, we got to do this one at a time, is that what we're saying?
Unless we read the captions for all of them at once.
Are we wanting to, without
Because
review
you've got
each?
questions on some, so let's just roll
Yep.
through. Just as they
Okay.
are.
Okay, so in this case, I'm confused about what this is, administratively eligible amendment fee. The current fee is $195. The proposed fee is $95, so it's going down.
Do we need to read them
No,
all?
we're just going to do G.
This gonna do,
Okay.
this gonna do the one now, and then if you want to read all of those other ones, we'll take them
Okay, so
together.
do I have a motion on the airport badge fees?
Moved. So
A
moved.
second?
Second.
A public comment?
Are we doing a motion to the proposed fee or to the 60/80?
The one,
The proposed of 3 steps.
1/3 of the
3
way
steps.
there each year.
Yeah.
And 100% by year 3?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. That's my second.
Okay, so that is the motion and the second. We've opened up for public comment. There was no public comment, so we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
did you want to read all of them and open them all up at the same time to do something very similar?
Well, I think, yeah, we can, just in case there's particular questions and issues, because I certainly have some on several of these.
Sure, okay.
So I will pull
Mayor,
back myself. Yes, ma'am.
Understand, I think what's being said, but would it be maybe as efficient to read one at a time, open it up, look at it, see if it would be the same scenario as the one we just approved on the badges, vote on that one, and then move through each of them rather than kind of jump around?
I don't really care. What I think I'm asking for is what Teresa or Julia says we need to do, if we have to do each individual one since they're all agenda items, or whether we can have a general, because I've got questions, so it might be easier to do one, do it, move to the next. Otherwise, we'll be jumping around.
Otherwise, we'll get confused
We will,
about.
and I will too.
I think that's what the public's prepared for too.
Okay, so item H, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance. Sorry,
Item H.
yeah, item H, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by amending Article A6-005A, park facility and activity fees for youth leagues and tournaments. So Teresa on this one.
Okay, so this one is an actual new fee. We didn't previously have youth volleyball leagues. We have other youth leagues. The fee that's being proposed for this is right in line with those other youth leagues, and so, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. The proposed fee is $300, and if they want to include jerseys, it would be $350 per team.
Okay, so right now it's 0.
That's because we don't offer this service. Currently, it would be a new service to offer a youth volleyball league.
And we're going to get in the business of creating jerseys for them?
I'll ask Mr. Casey to come up and
'Cause
address
I think that
question.
should be their responsibility more than us getting in the business of making T-shirts. We're a city, we shouldn't be in the jersey business.
We don't make them, and Brent Casey, Recreation Manager, we don't make the jerseys, we just order them for them if they choose for us to do so, but a lot of teams do go out and get their own because they spend a lot of money on their uniforms.
That's something we already offer for other leagues.
Absolutely, yes.
So we're saying we don't do it now, we're gonna open up the door to do it.
No, we do it for lots of our different other youth leagues, but what we get, we don't make them, we go out
Right,
and order
no,
them,
I'm not-
obviously.
I know
and-
that.
And yes, and we get them.
We currently just don't offer this particular sport, right? So we're offering a new sport, we're offering them the same thing we do for other leagues.
So do we get some kind of good discount for doing this for them?
We can, for doing it for.
Or ordering the T-shirts? I'm just wondering why the leagues don't take care of it all. I guess I'm with the mayor on this.
We run the league, so.
Okay, all right.
We run the league, but most of the jerseys cost us around $8 for average per jersey.
So
Because we
if
can
the
get 'em cheaper than
jerseys
that.
are $8, what's the $350? I mean, I'm
There's 6 on a team. So we charge $300 if they're going to get their own jerseys. $350 is what we're requesting for us to go out and purchase your jerseys, and then you pay us the $350, and we'll give you the jerseys.
Team cost.
Team cost, yes, sir.
Okay.
It would just seem to be simpler for us not to be involved in the making of, the ordering of these jerseys, because what happens if I'm a size small and they come in, but I'm a size medium, but I order them and they're big, and so I really need a size small. What do we do with those jerseys then?
Well, I think what Brent is saying is that we already order shirts for all of our other leagues, and
Right.
so this would just be an additional league that we would order jerseys for. In addition, the city realizes some cost savings because we have a relationship with a T-shirt maker, I guess, and so that we're allowed to pass that savings on to these youth that are wanting to play volleyball.
And we've just been doing this in the past, so it's nothing new.
Right, we already
But
offer it for all the other ones, we're just doing it now for volleyball.
You're just asking for
because
youth
you're-
volleyball is all you're asking for.
Yes,
Then
and-
it comes, go ahead, Brent,
And
sorry.
with the jerseys, some of the teams go to San Antonio, they go to Dallas, they travel, they play in big tournaments. So some of them are just recreational leagues, just getting a team started, may have never played before. So they don't care about the jersey. Go get me a T-shirt for $5 to $8. I'll be happy with that. Put a number on it, my name, and I'm tickled pink. The other ones want to look good because they're going and playing in larger tournaments. They have travel teams and everything else. So it's just, we're asking to get the league started, which has been requested of us. So that's just what we're trying to do.
So then it goes back to our conversation before, if it costs us $357, is that what we're gonna ask, since we're having this conversation? Because it goes back to cost of service.
Does it cover your entire cost of service, Brent?
Brent?
The $50.
It says it doesn't.
This is a precedent, Bear. I mean, I think if we have a new service that's kicking in, then
Why
we should
wouldn't
look
we?
at the cost of service and say, this is what it is, and this is what we should be charging, and make sure that we understand moving forward that that's what our goal is, to get to 100%. We might as well start it off at 100%.
Yeah, I mean,
So the
why are
cost
we-
of service that we
Cost of the
provided
jersey.
does include the jerseys. So the 357 is pretty close in line with the 350 of.
So
that
you're
we're-
saying
But we're gonna be
there's
100, then
six-
make it 358 or whatever.
You're saying there's 6 people on the team, and there's $8 per shirt.
So $48.
So $48, so it covers the cost
That's not the
of the shirt itself.
We're just looking at the numbers in front of us, and it says cost of service is $357.58. We've just had the conversation that we want to be 100% of the fee, so I'm just asking for input.
So we've got two numbers on the proposed fees, 3 and 350. Is the cost of service the 357 to the 300?
The 350 would go to the
The
357.
cost of service of $357.58 compares with the $350, including jerseys.
Including jerseys.
So you would just move that cost, your jerseys up to what, 358 or 360, whatever it is, right?
$7.
Because there's no
Move it to
reason.
360, yes, ma'am, if you'd like.
Yeah. Okay,
Makes
so
sense.
That makes sense.
we would be at 360 on this.
360.
Okay, for cost of service. Is this one on its own, or is there more with this one?
This, there are more recreation fees, but that's it for this
So
particular fee.
then do I have a motion to approve this one as a fee of 360?
So move.
A second, any public comment? No public comment, we have a public comment.
Public comment, Steve Hampton. All of these should be just at the cost and rounding up. I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. So take a vote. The cost of service is going to be 360. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0.
Okay, this next fee is for the Recreation Adaptive League, and that is for children with special needs. The current fee is $20, and the proposed fee is $30. The reason for the request for this change in the fee is that some of our leagues for adaptive leagues are currently charging $30, some are charging $20, and so this one is more to keep it consistent across the board for each of the sports that we offer for adaptive leagues.
Well, this then brings up one more time the question mark of if we're going to be at 100% in 3 years, is this too big of a jump on this particularly one to go from 30 to the 3-year 100%? So we need to have.
The third, Mayor, is that what you're
Yes,
On
ma'am.
this one, I think that we've intentionally kept the proposed fee below the cost of service because of the impact that families already feel from having a child with special needs, and so I think the intention was to keep it a little bit lower on this one.
So the question mark is, with that conversation, keeping it lower, but at what point do you or do you not start addressing the difference?
And are there exceptions, basically,
And
what it
yes,
comes down
is
to?
what we're saying.
Mhm.
Billy?
This would be an exception where I don't think I'd want to do the third at this point.
So would you
So
think
I'd
if we got to
probably-
80%, 75, 80% of the cost over 3 years?
I think there has to be some formula.
Yeah, I think there has to be some. We'll share this, but my suggestion would be to get to 75% of the cost minimum over 3 years.
Okay. So I don't have my
Could they do
calculator.
that calculation real quick for us to see what it would put the proposed fee up to?
Roughly $80.
$82.
Roughly $80, Billy.
That's a pretty big jump.
Is the 80 is the 80 the third year or 80 the first year? Who has a calculator?
75% at the third year would be $96.53.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a
What would
comment.
it be the first year?
Good morning again. I'd like to just say that if you're going to go up that much on this one, there's going to be a lot of people coming in asking us to either find them a sponsor to pay for that or to come up with some type of a scholarship type of thing. There are different organizations in the city that do that for individuals. We at the Recreation Department do not as a city, but that will be something that is asked a lot if you jump up on this one. Just wanted to put that out there.
Brent?
Yes.
I see the financial impact, $850. Does that mean that by going up $10, you have about 85 event, registration events that would be affected?
Yes, currently we have 4 different leagues, and actually a couple of them are already at 30. We just wanted to get them the same across the board.
So if you spread that across, it's about 20 people affected in 4 different leagues.
Yes, sir.
21 people.
Mayor, that's not the mayor's fault.
No, that's not the mayor's fault. Sergeant at Arms, make the collection.
I have to get everybody
Brent,
help
what's
me
your
on this.
suggestion here?
I don't know.
What would you like to see?
I would like to see you just leave it at 30 across the board for all adaptive leagues, and also put in there that's for any adaptive league, because we would like to adjust the adaptive leagues. Currently we have volleyball, soccer, baseball, and basketball. But if they come to us and say, hey, we'd like to do this one, we've tried flag football in the past, they didn't care for that one, so we won't do that one again. But we'd like to be able to give them what they want, because the thing that the adaptive people have is Special Olympics, and that's like a one-time-a-year thing, is my understanding. I'm not involved with Special Olympics anymore, and never have been here in San Angelo. But that was the reason that the adaptive league got started, is because they came to and said, hey, what about us? Our kids have nothing to do. Give us something to do. So we did, and they love it. If you haven't seen the adaptive league programs going on, come out, because it hits you right there.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Just
I would like
So
to
we
make a
agree.
motion that we approve this one as
written.
been recommended.
Second.
With the motion and a second, is there public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, that passes 6-0.
So this next one has to do with summer track meet events, athletic leagues and tournaments, special events and tournaments. These are proposed, the main change with these are going from a flat rate to a fee range, and that allows flexibility for the recreation manager to bring in different types of events and different sizes of events. And so if you have questions about what would be charged, a $15 fee versus a $5 fee, I'm sure that Brent could answer that for you.
I think we should have explanation, so he could just, he's our man with all the knowledge, so he can explain it to us.
Okay, so currently it is set at $5. So what we're trying to do is give kids an opportunity for the summer track, for example. This year, we're having our track meet on June the 15th, and they're allowed to enter as many things as they would like, but we're leaving it at the $5. So we'd like to be able to increase that in the future for our track meets up to, okay, we're going to charge you $5 for an event or whatever. But our goal is to give the kids the opportunity to try different things. So if they've always been 800-meter runner and they've never done the long jump, then this is their opportunity. Their parents can sign them up for the long jump if they can get their coach to agree to it. I know our coach wouldn't agree to it if their kids haven't practiced it, but if they want to do that, especially the younger kids, to see what they want to do for the rest of the summer and continue to work on those things, then that's the ideal. So it's more time for our staff, the more events that they enter, so that's what we're looking for with the track program, is just to be able to increase it, because right now it's $5 for all the events that they enter. So.
Well, one of the things we talk about on these other is cost of service. So what we don't have here is information relative to, okay, what is this financially?
Cost of service. I don't have that.
That one, as far as for the tournament, is going to be hard to predict because it varies so much from time to time. As Brent said, this one does take a lot of the time of the staff. They view it more as a larger program, and of course it has an impact on the community, but we don't have that exact number on this.
I think we kind of need to understand it a little further. I don't know if these are good numbers or bad numbers, or what the numbers are.
Currently, each of the participants are paying an $80 fee just to participate in our summer track program, and then this is just an additional fee for the track meet, which we have at least one here every year. So.
On the track program, the $80 fee, is that a fee we're reviewing today or not? That one's not on this list. Okay. So that may be one that we want to revisit as far as the cost of service based when we actually review that program itself.
Well,
So I guess we can't make a decision on this if we don't know if we're going to get to cost of service or not.
that's
We'll
what
bring you
this-
the information back at the next meeting,
Yeah.
which has the track program as a whole, which is the $80 fee, and then this coupled in with that and show you where it falls.
bring
That
it
might
back and
help.
have the total
Correct.
picture on this
The
one, because
whole
I don't think
picture.
we know what we're
Right.
improving.
Since this is just a piece of it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So Is that for the next three things listed there as well?
If they don't have cost of service, Brooke.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you.
So with that, then, would you like to approve this on first reading and make the change on second reading?
We want a full presentation, just, we're not
We'll have to
taking
bring this
action.
back two more
Yes.
times.
That's right.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Then item I, public hearing, first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by amending Article A6-005C Nature Center fees for memberships and special event fees.
The first one for Nature Center is the memberships. The current fee for an individual is $15. For a family membership is $25. We're proposing to increase those fees to $25 and $50.
Now, yeah, because the issue is family membership, so a family member of 4 and more or 8 and more is all the same fee?
A family of 4, and then, is there an additional fee after 4?
Appears minimal.
Sorry, guys.
So right now, it's a family membership for a family of 4, and if you have over 4, then it's another $25, so it's basically like purchasing 2 family memberships.
What if there's a family of 5? Because that would make sense to go from 25 to 50 for just one more member.
Family membership?
Yeah.
It's just like we're purchasing the family membership plus the extra 25. The new individual is.
That makes sense. So for a family membership, for a family of 5 with the proposed fee, you'd pay the $50 for the first 4. Any additional member would be $25, which is the individual rate for the proposed fee here.
Is 15. So the proposed fee is the individual goes up to 25 and family goes to 50. 50 is for a family of 4. And any more than that, it would be
You'd pay the individual rate.
75.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
And that then says the cost of service of 25 would be relative to 38 and 50 to 55.
Yes, ma'am.
So we would,
We can get that. This is not
Yeah,
a huge. This is
no.
not a huge jump. We can get there
right now.
We can get there. You know,
in a year,
in a year,
2 years.
2 years at the most. So.
I mean, because you certainly aren't going to.
And in the others, if you wanted to round up, then you could change those to, like we did in the others.
Tina,
For
is
example,
this is complicated? If we're doing 2 years and some 3 years,
I
would
think
you
it's
prefer? Would you prefer just the 3 years at this
I
point?
think
mean,
it helps to be consistent
I
in
think
that way.
so, because when you start looking at 3
It'll be
years
hard for us
budget-
to remember what,
There you go.
keep
So
track
we
of
would-
which ones to bring back each
We
year.
can vote to, accept the new proposed fee on this with the idea that in 3 years, we would meet the cost of service. So
Correct.
is that correct for everybody? Okay,
Correct.
so then could I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Okay, and a second? Okay, any public comment?
Yes, Mayor, Steve Hampton. I don't understand the hesitancy. Why does the city, the council have to be the big heart on all these things? Especially with the sports, they talked about scholarships. People can do that. Let them be the big heart and write it off on their income tax. Why does the city always have to do that? I don't understand. We have.
Are you addressing the nature fees right now, or are you going to the previous
I'm talking
fee?
about nature fees also. Yes.
Well, why, I guess.
Why don't we do these at the cost of service and just round it off at the nearest dollar? You don't have to even go up to the tens. You can just stay right on there, and that way we don't have to worry about the 3 years at all. If we just make an ordinance, it always says keep it at the cost of service, rounded up to the nearest dollar. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Can
Yes,
we,
Billy.
I just for my clarification, I thought the reason we weren't making the total jump on these right now was because we got so far behind in the past that we didn't keep up with our fees.
Right.
And rather than produce a lot of sticker shock for our citizens that we were going to do it incrementally.
That is correct.
Is that, okay?
That is correct.
So, you know, it would be a real sticker shock because I remember the presentation that Chief Dunn made to us last year. If we went from what we were charging now to the full cost of it, it would not be feasible. So I just wanted to make sure I still had that understanding that we were playing catch up because we didn't keep up before.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the motion and the second on this and the public comment has been had. So the motion is to accept these proposed fees as presented and use the same 3-year tier to get to the 100%. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, next up is Nature Center birthday parties. The current fee is $65. We're proposing a fee of $75. Cost of service, $76.
I would say the cost of service 76, the proposed fee should be $80. I mean, we're so close to it, there's no reason to.
Yep, moved with that.
In a second.
Second.
Any public comment? With no public comment, we will approve the proposed fee being moved to $80. May I go back to that? Then I have a question. On these birthday parties, so the fee is based off of how many people, or is there, because I think that's the one thing we need to talk through on this is it now going to be $80 for 100 people, or is it $80 for 6 people, or what is it? Because again, if it's the same fee regardless of the size of the group, that doesn't make sense.
It was 80, well, it was,
Or
was
seven.
it up to 12 people, $1 per each additional child up to age 15.
But, okay, so if you take, I'm just going to use 75. If you divide 75 by 15, what is that per person?
$5.
It's $5. So the question mark is, once you go over 12, all of a sudden the cost of service is only $1 per person. And I would say it would make more sense to not be $1, but maybe $2.50 or 50% of the per person rate.
But if the cost of service is $76.19, is that regardless of 12 or
That's
20?
my question.
Yeah, your staffing levels and so forth are basically the same.
Yes, they stay the same.
No matter how many people?
Up to 12.
Up to 12, and then what happens
they
if you
limit
go
you-
to 20 people?
If they went to 20 people, then they would charge the $1 extra per person, and we would ask for volunteers to come in and assist us with the party. But normally only like one extra volunteer, so it wouldn't be a paid staff. It's normally, the Nature Center has tons of volunteers, so normally they would be the one that came in with our staff.
And then, of course, the size of our parties can only get so big because the building
Right.
can't handle
What's
it.
the maximum capacity for these parties?
The building is 80 people.
80?
That doesn't include the yard, the parking lot, everything else where we put other things for special events, but the building is 80 people.
So 80 people is, because,
Typically, we don't see them that large.
yeah.
That's
But
unusual.
just so we know. We've already approved it, so moving forward.
That is something you could ask to bring back on second reading if you'd like Brent and Tina to look at that.
Well, I think there's a reason to say that incremental over the 12, maybe it shouldn't be $1, but maybe it should be a little more.
Brent's costs are still fixed, if I heard him correctly. Is that accurate?
If they get the volunteers, yeah.
If they get the, it sounds
there-
like they don't have any trouble getting volunteers, so I don't think
Is there
it's-
any snacks or anything else that are given out?
They bring their own.
They
for the
bring their
party,
own
yes.
food, so there's no additional things. So at this point, just leave it as it is.
I think we're good.
Leave it as it is. There's no reason to do that. Okay. Okay.
Next up, we have
The
fire
next up
department.
is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by amending Article A11.000 Fire and Rescue Service Fees.
So So you'll recall last year we brought these ambulance, fire and rescue fees to you, and we were so far away from the actual cost of service that you asked us to continue to bring it back annually until we do get to that 100% of cost of service. This is the second year. Last year we went to 70% of the cost of service, and this year we're proposing to go to 80% of the cost of service on these fees. So the first one we have is the Advanced Life Support Type 1 Emergency. The current fee is $979. The 80% cost of service is $1,216. The financial impact would be just under $150,000.
So current fees, $1,000, 80% would be $1,216.90. All right, so if we take the, let's say, 980 minus, do the normal thing that we said. And
This is going to get us there. Within 3
Right.
years.
We're showing you the 80, 90, and 100% of cost of service. You could do the same thing to direct us to go to the 100% of service, cost of service over these three.
Yeah,
we
and make it
presented to
equal.
you.
Yeah, make it
Yes,
equal.
I would, yes, to keep
Okay,
it.
with that, do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment? With no public comment, we will vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0.
The second fire fee that we have is Advanced Life Support Type 2 Emergency. Current fee is $1,416. The financial impact would be $4,000 if we went to 80% of the cost of service at $1,760.
We want to use the same standard here. We want to use the same standard. So do I have a motion for that?
Move.
Tom moves. Who
Second.
seconds? Second by Tommy or Lane, or double second. And any public comment? No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0.
Okay.
And I would assume the same thing on this one. Do I have the motion?
I wouldn't.
Billy moves. Lane seconds. All in public comment? Take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
So the mileage fee is a per patient mile fee. The current fee is $12. The cost of service is $13.91, and we're proposing a fee of $13.75.
Why wouldn't we do 1391 or 14? I guess.
Just move it to 14.
14, yeah.
Okay.
The motion go to 14.
Motion, second. A motion by Tom, second by Harry. Public comment? No public comment. Motion to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Motion passes 6-0. All right, what we're going to do right now,
We skipped
I'm
one.
sorry.
Wait.
Apparently I skipped one. I'm
sorry,
Quick on the trigger over there.
same story.
Oh, they said same story on that one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What we're going to do right now is we're going to take a break, and we're going to go into executive session and have lunch. So our executive, and then we'll finish the
Fees?
the fees when we return. So our closed session, executive session under the provision of Government Code Title 5, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.072, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property of deliberation in an open meeting would have detrimental effect on the position of the governmental body in negotiations with a third person regarding 1, the Ford Ranch, and 2, property commonly known as the city farm. We will be an hour and 15 minutes, so we will return at 12:25. We're going to move on, following closed session, to item 10, follow-up and administrative issues. So, A, we will consider items discussed in closed session. Tommy?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a lease agreement with Recurrent Energy for up to 342 acres located along Highway 67 for the development of a solar farm, contingent on Recurrent negotiating access to the Red Creek substation within 180 days.
Thank you. And now we will...
We have a second?
I will second the
that's
motion.
a second, sorry. And there's a public comment. With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. With none opposed, motion passes 6-0. Now, before we move on to administrative issues, we'll go back to the regular agenda. And I believe we were finished with item I, so we're ready to go into.
We finished J.
And J, so we're ready to do K. So public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by amending Article A15.003H, other rental fees for civic events, facility use fee, and Tina, you're on.
Yes, ma'am. Again, Tina Deersky, Director of Finance. The facility use fee is a fee that we charge. The intention for this fee is to retain that revenue in order to maintain and keep up our buildings and facilities. So the current fee right now is a range. It ranges from 50 cents to $1.50 per ticket, and we're proposing a $2 fee per ticket for tickets over $5, and for tickets under $5 or less would be 50 cents per ticket. The cost of service on this one was pretty difficult to calculate. The way we did it was to calculate the number of tickets that were sold last year, I believe, and basically divided the cost of operating and maintaining the facilities by that number of tickets. And so that's where we came to the $4.78.
Which clearly says that this fee is not intended to cover all costs.
Right.
That $4.78 would cover all costs.
That's right.
This fee just assists in providing monies to operate
So
and
what
maintain.
takes care of the rest of the cost of service then?
They have other revenue streams, for example, hotel occupancy tax, and of course, revenues from their facilities, concessions, rentals, merchandise, yeah. So with this one, I wanted to point out that this is very close in line with what other cities are charging. Lubbock has a $3 fee, Amarillo has a $2 fee, Midland has a $3 fee, Wichita Falls a $3 fee. For a fee like this, from what I'm told by Sid, we just want to be able to keep it competitive so that we can draw more vendors to our market.
This is also consistent with what we're charging for the auditorium.
That's correct. Per our agreement with the auditorium, they are charging a $2 facility maintenance fee that they retain for maintenance of the auditorium.
And this fee for these tickets goes towards what?
This goes, well, the intended purpose is to upkeep and maintain our existing facilities.
But it doesn't cover the entire cost to maintain them, so you use other sources to do that.
To supplement, yes.
And if we did try to cover the cost of service, it would make the ticket prices out of range for ability to provide
Yes, ma'am.
entertainment. All right, do I have
Move
a
to approve as
motion?
presented.
Harry moved.
Second.
Second by Billy. Public comment. With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, that motion passes 6-0. We'll move into item L, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by amending Article A 9.000, planning-related fees.
So for planning, we're actually proposing a slight decrease in this fee. It's a planning amendment that's administratively eligible, which means that John can approve it. Sorry, I'm just getting to my notes here. They only require John's approval, and so the current fee is $195. The proposed fee is $95. Cost of service at almost $130, and it would have a financial impact of less revenue of $1,000 in the amount of $1,000.
I think my first question is, why would we not reduce it to the cost of service, since they're already used to paying the $195? Why wouldn't we just take it down to the $130?
John, yeah, I was like.
I think part of the issue with these fees related to downtown and river corridor development, which is what many of these apply to, we were concerned about making sure the fee was low enough so as not to discourage people from seeking development in those areas, since this is a fee that if you're in other parts of the city, you don't have to comply with. We don't
So what does it do?
Well, this is actually, it's sort of a new fee, because right now, if you get, say, a river corridor approval for a remodeling of the facade of a downtown building. And then later, say 6 months later, you change what you want to do and come back to amend that. Right now, we don't have an amendment fee. So you just get charged the same fee as if it's a new request. But if you're just asking to change something about some development that's already been approved, that takes less of our time and it's a simpler review. So that's why, number one, why we created a separate amendment fee, but that's also why we wanted it to be a reduced fee.
Pretty complicated. That explanation doesn't exactly clear the muddy water. So, again, the question mark, we still have a cost of service is $129.83. And we have an objective today to get to 100%. So whether we choose to simply do this one and meet that cost of service right now, because it still would be less than the current fee, or whether we do the 95 and then get to the 130 in our 3-year span. So somebody weigh in on that.
Not a whole lot. I mean, you can kind of back into that number from the financial impact. This isn't a thing that we see a whole lot compared to some of the other fees. I will say, and this is kind of relevant to what we'll talk about with the building fees, as we looked at all of those, many of our building fees are much lower than the 100% cost recovery. So as we looked at them, our goal was roughly to get to 75%. We thought jumping all the way to 100% would be too much to take on, even over a 3-year period. And that's something we can get to on the next item, but that's part of the reason that this isn't the full cost of service. On this one, I don't think it's a big deal. If we jump straight to the cost of service, like you said, it's still coming down from what they're paying today.
The 130.
I'd say make it 130.
130.
Right.
I make a motion to make this a $130 fee.
Okay, a motion and a second, and a public comment. With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0.
Next planning fee is planning, design, and historic review, administratively eligible. Current fee of $195, proposed fee of $50, cost of service $90, financial impact, less revenue of $1,450.
And it would seem, since we're coming down, that we ought to get to the cost of service of $90. And
Let me just add one thing on this. This is a new fee, and what's not shown on here.
why is it current fee if it's a new fee?
Well, I'm sorry, it's, right now, what this doesn't say, what's in your background, is this is what we call the like-for-like fee. So if you're simply replacing, say, doors and windows with doors and windows that are exactly the same or similar material, this was an attempt based on, if you recall, a few months ago, we talked about the new standards for River Corridor, Downtown, and Cultural District. One of the concerns raised by citizens was, if I'm just replacing something just like what's already there, I should have a lower fee. And so this is creating basically a new fee. Right now, they have to pay the full $195. This was a way to give a lesser cost if you're just simply replacing like for like.
And I would agree with that. But relative to our conversation, once again, we're proposing something lower than the current fee. Cost of service is $90, so I think the recommendation should be to stick to the $90 cost of service and leave it at that.
It's like for like, why is there even a fee?
Well, it's
You
probably
still have to review their information to
Paperwork.
verify that it is, like, what they're proposing is like for like, and it's not changing the materials or colors or that sort of thing.
Doesn't take near as long as the full review.
I mean,
that
this
they were paying
literally
for.
maybe, an hour or two of work for somebody, but the staff time for that, it's a fairly small cost, but just somebody spending an hour or two reviewing it.
Replace a front door because someone busted it in. If I owned a building down there and I need it like that.
Well, not if they broke into your building, you wouldn't, but if you're remodeling a building is what they're talking about. If somebody broke into your building, you're not going to go to the city hall to ask
Right,
for
but
replacing that door.
if they damage it enough to where you have to replace the entire door.
You still wouldn't go to, you don't have to go to permits to do that. If it's on your building, it's damaged, regardless, they have to replace the frame, you're just going to do that. If you're going to put the same door back up,
Depends
right?
on the level of complexity to what they're doing, and also whether it's got local historic zoning on it or all those things. There's several different things that
And
come
these
into
are,
play.
I would assume, primarily on redesign, reworking, redoing a building that's not a completed building. This is in the restoration,
restoration,
redoing.
okay.
This
So
isn't just
yeah.
your door broke down.
Okay.
Not just
There's
regular
no fee
maintenance.
there,
This would
right?
typically be for a historic building in downtown, for example.
I have a comment, I think. On the current fee, it seems like the current fee to begin with was too much. If you're saying it only takes an hour, hour and a half, couple of hours, $195 charging someone for that, way too much to begin with. So is our cost of service really $89.90?
The original fee was
Yes.
not based on this work. The original fee was based on them going for a full review, full commission. So this is a total new fee that takes into account that it only takes that smaller amount of time versus the $195, which is based on a full-fledged case. There wasn't an option for this.
So we're paying somebody $89.90 an hour?
We also
look
take
at-
into consideration, it's not just salaries.
It's salaries.
Buildings?
So salaries plus benefits for John's staff that spends time on reviewing that, and then, of course, some of John's time to review his staff's work as well. And I don't remember if this one has, does it have any other?
If you're doing
Some
like
some
for like-
mileage if they have to drive and look at the site, so there's some of that included
I'm
in there.
sorry, if you're doing like for like, the director of planning has to say that the staff member can't tell like to like?
On something like this, typically, and I don't know if we included in my time at all on this one, but oftentimes I wouldn't see one like this. But again, just the front desk person who processes the application may spend 15 minutes on it, and then the planner that reviews it would spend some time, maybe even having to go out to the site and take some pictures. I mean, we get to $89 fairly quickly. I will add one more thing. Some of this is related to changes that we've proposed for the ordinance that haven't gone into effect yet. You may recall that you all tabled those changes to the river corridor and downtown standards. That would have created more reviews, and one of the concerns that you all asked us to look at was creating this new lower fee before you felt comfortable implementing those new rules. If more things were going to be reviewed, you all wanted this lower fee, and so this is in response to that. And so if we have this fee, then we'll feel more comfortable bringing back that ordinance change to you at a future meeting.
Well, go ahead, Billy.
No, I was just going to close out to say, certainly you're the expert on that, and Tina, from a financial standpoint. So I will accept the cost of service being $89.90. It just seems really high to me.
I think sometimes, Billy, on all of these, I mean, if we go back and start questioning, how do we come up with $89.90 based off of this? And then we got to go to every single one of them and say, how did you come up with the cost for each of these? Because that same analysis would have to apply to all of these fees. And it gets difficult when you start doing it that way.
But I think
But
this one
that's-
was
you're
just kind
right.
of so straightforward.
know.
But anyway, the current fee being $195, I would make a motion that we set the proposed fee at the cost of service, $90. I make that motion.
Second.
And there's a motion by Billy and a second by Lane.
I thought I
Lane was
already
qu-
made that motion.
I thought you did
Oh,
too.
did you?
so-
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to double, triple that motion.
Well, means everybody's in agreement, so maybe we don't need to take a vote, because it sounds like everybody already voted. But we'll take a vote. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. No, nays, motion passes.
Okay, and this is your final fee for planning. It's a change of zone classification for sign fee. The current fee is $37.50 with a $25 rebate or refund. And we're proposing to go to a fee of $15. The cost of service is $21.84 with a financial impact of $62.50.
Talk about the rebate. What's that?
Well, this is one we're trying to simplify. What we used to use, if you remember, were those big, heavy metal signs, like a realtor sign, like a for sale sign in front of a house. And so what we would do is charge the applicant the full $37.50, but then when they brought back the sign, so that we wouldn't have the cost of having to buy these all the time, if they brought it back, we would give them $25 back. It was a way to help ensure that we got our signs back. Now we've shifted to using those little like plastic corrugated signs that we reuse them as much as possible, but if we lose them, they're not as expensive to purchase. And so we're going to get rid of the rebate altogether and just have a flat fee. Again, we proposed 15, just trying to drop that fee. I'd be fine with the cost of service on that one as well. But it's mainly to simplify it and get rid of that rebate.
I think it's sticking with our standard of trying to meet cost of service, then who's making the motion? Yeah. Harry did and Lane seconded it. So the cost of service is $20? $22. Cost of service will be $22. That's a motion and a second for $22. Going twice, $22. Any public comment?
You must have took some of that medication.
Okay.
Guy Andrews pay up.
Next, please.
We need to vote on the mayor being the auctioneer.
Yeah, she might get an F on that. Okay, so moving on.
No, we didn't
vote.
Oh, we didn't vote. Okay, so we're going to vote now. All in favor?
Aye.
See, we're not used to hanging out this long together, so it's getting a little silly. So there were none opposed. Motion passes 6-0.
We'll be done by 11, Tom.
He told me 12.
He told me 10:30.
Next.
All y'all, I finally guessed right.
You said 2.
He said 2. Yeah.
It's going to be
Gary
later
said
than that.
earlier, we're going to spend
It's
an hour and a
2:15.
half on this. I'm like, no, we're not.
Oh, yeah, we're
You know what?
exactly.
He's right.
Okay, Tina. Oh, wait, I have to get my sheet out, sorry. Okay, we're now going to have public hearing of first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by amending Article A9.000, planning-related fees.
So our first fee that we have for permits and inspections is the demolition of accessory structure.
We just did
Wait a
that
minute,
one.
you read
We need to
L
read-
again, didn't you?
I did?
Read item M.
Sorry.
I missed that.
It's a trick. Okay, M, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule by amending Article A2.000, building and construction-related fees.
So for permits and inspections, I believe we have a total of 20 to 24. I can't remember exactly. Do you want to go through these each one by one? Or do you want to go through them quickly and determine if we want to go with the concept that we've been using with others, or what's your?
I think we need to go through each of them because I
Okay.
think people might have different questions on different elements of it. But
Okay.
obviously, we're going to try to stick with the same mentality.
Sure. Okay, so the first one is demolition of accessory structure. The current fee is $15. The proposed fee is $30, and the cost of service is $90. Apparently, we only have about one of these per year with the financial impact.
Is this with the, okay, go ahead, John.
If I could add one thing, this is kind of related to all of these fees. As you'll see with the number of these, we're very much lower. The $15 is a whole lot lower than the cost of service. So as we looked at these, our goal was to get to the 75% point over 3 years. And as you noticed in your packet, we provided a letter from the home builders. We also presented this to the Development Task Force, and that's what we proposed to them. And so I just say that as a caution. If you're looking at going to 100%, that's not what we've presented throughout our public process.
Over 2 years or 3 years?
Over 3 years. But over 3 years, getting to that 75% point, not all the way to 100. And so I know Home Builders Association representative is here to speak, but what they've endorsed as an organization was getting to 75% over 3 years. So
And
if
who said that we need that? I mean, I think the concern we would all have up here is how do we settle on 75% or 50% or 100% or, I mean.
Again, the way we looked at it was we were so low today.
On the financial impact, and if it's greater than X, but
Yeah, it
this one
is.
we should go all the way. You don't
Am
have
I
to-
reading this incorrectly then? If I look at the chart that we were just given, you have 100% cost of service. And I see year 3 over here is right at the 100% mark, right?
No, it's at 75%.
Yes, ma'am. So in your background,
No, it's at the 100%.
It says 62.
so in your background package, you had information that got you to year 1, 2, and 3 at 75%. And what Julia has just handed out to you is getting to 100% versus the 75% over a 3-year period.
Right, and that's our goal, to get it.
Depending on what you direct me to do, but as John just said, he has discussed the concept, and what he's presented to the public up to now was getting to the 75% mark over a 3-year period. But you certainly have the authority to make that change to get to 100% if that's what you choose to do.
What we were presented here is not what the group that met agreed on. That's right. Okay. Oh,
This
What they
is
agreed?
just an attempt to be responsive to what we're hearing you say today.
Yes, in
Yes,
fact,
but we didn't realize.
we
I mean,
actually
I-
just created this while you were in executive session so that you could see what the 100% looked like versus the 75% that you saw before.
Thank you.
I would simply say that we probably should make sure that we've talked all afternoon about getting to 100% in 3 years on most of these. These are not quite there. I would say move them a couple more dollars and get to 100% in year 3.
And on most of these, that's not a big jump. You know, for example, this first one, we're proposing 30, and getting to 100 would take you to 40 instead of 30. So it just depends on, you know, how big the initial charge was to what that.
Well, I think there's,
difference
you
would
know,
be.
as a council, we're a little concerning that there was work and effort put into working with the Home Builders Association on getting agreement and support for certain numbers, of which council wasn't involved in those conversations. And so now we're being presented with what you guys have negotiated, and it makes us look like it's not a good situation.
Again, I think that the reasoning for that was, as John said, we were so far behind on the cost of service versus the current fee that the idea was to more slowly get to that 100% mark, and for the time being to get to 75%. But again, you have the prerogative to make a change if you want us to present something differently.
And this may,
These fee schedules do not line up with what you've got there anyway.
Which one?
Proposed fee on this one is $40
Right,
in
but
year
they
1.
made this at lunch while we were up in the
See, they
meeting.
gave us a new one from what we had in our packet.
They made
I
this
did.
while we were in
Oh,
executive
okay.
Yes, I
session.
had my staff
So
prepare.
what you're seeing up on the screen is not what we see here. Okay.
This on the screen is at 75, getting to the 75% of cost of service, and I had my staff during your lunch break work up what it looked like at 100% because I was hearing that from you all morning that you're trying to get to the 100%, and I wanted you to see what that looked like versus the 75%.
well, and I will say this as well, as far as, and please don't beat me up over this, but on a good faith effort, we did talk about 75% by the 3rd year. I mean, by the 4th year, we could be at 100%. If that's what the city council wants to look at, because that was what was discussed, John, with those developers, the community, and the individuals you met with. So that may be an exception at this point to get to the 75% by year 3, and then by year 4, 100%.
I think we have to honor that.
I don't think we
opinion,
can
if that was-
not, but
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
we should
Key-
be cautious of what we do to work with groups.
agree.
If in fact it's going to come back to city council with the showing us 100%. I don't think we want to put anybody in a bad situation saying, we worked with the Home Builders Association
We're
for
very
these
involved.
agreements. You were very involved in it. On the other hand, it's pretty heavy-handed relative to now coming before council and saying, we've already negotiated this, here it is, do you approve it? It's uncomfortable.
Right, so we're
It's not
good with
correct.
probably all of that you pre-negotiated, except for maybe the bottom, and next to the last and third from the bottom, where, does that actually go down?
Those are
We've already done
planning
those
fees that
bottom
we've already
3.
discussed.
Okay, cool.
The real challenge with the fees is when they just don't move year after year after year. So getting to 100 over 4 years is certainly less difficulty than we've experienced the last 4 years.
Well, I think what I've understood, and I could be totally wrong, but I'm sure I'm not, and that is that the last time these fees were established, the home builders then had said, but you need to take these on an annual basis and incrementally increase them so we don't get in the hole again, and that hasn't been done. And so we just fell further behind, although when the home builders said, here's a check, we're going to make you whole again, make you black ink. Now, what you need you to do is be increasing these on an annual basis so we don't end up in trouble again. And here we are.
And I will say that this is about 1/3 of the fees that we have with permits, and so that's why we proposed a 3-year cycle of getting to that 75% mark, was that we plan to bring another third next year, and then the remaining third that following year, and try to get those on a cycle where we are reviewing them annually and that we're updating them more regularly.
Well, I
We're not
think,
going off this, we're going off what they've already negotiated with the home builders.
well, I think it's hard to object to what they've already negotiated. I think that's
Well,
kind of put before us.
Well, and we're talking about getting there in 4 years, 100% in 4 years. So as long as that's understood by us as well as staff, not 3 but 4, then to me, I'm with Tom. I think we
Well,
can do
the question mark is if we get to 75 now, does that make too big of a jump from 75 to 100 on the 4th year? Or should there be?
But we'd have to review that before it went.
I know, we would. So, if the home built, sounds like there's an agreement. So with that, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to go as written and suggested by staff.
Second?
Second.
With that, the second, any public comment?
Mayor, I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. You're saying as written and directed by staff, we're talking about up to 75% by year 3, and then year 4, we can bring it back up to year 3,
Yes.
but the goal is to get it up to 100%. But that's what you're saying, right, Tom, as far as the getting it up to 75% by year 3?
75% by year 3,
Okay.
as we have discussed and approved and agreed with the home builders.
Okay. And that's, I guess, split up evenly over the 3 years, basically, to get us to that point. Rounding up 1.
That's how you've done it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Kristen Oliver with the Home Builders Association, and we just want to say thank you to Charlie and Aaron and John and their whole team, because we really appreciate the effort that they have made to involve us and work with us. We all realize that we all have a common goal. We want to make the city prosperous. And one side note I would add, our builders provide tax base. And so the more homes they're building, the more tax base that continues on indefinitely. So that is one thing. I know it does kind of sound like, well, we're asking for the 75%, but housing is a huge issue right now, especially affordable housing. And it's something that we are fighting not only locally, but at the state and the national level as well. And so we appreciate the effort tremendously. We appreciate the effort because everyone here has the same goal, I do believe, is to keep housing affordable. And, there's a statistic that for every $1,000 that a house home increases, that knocks 22,000 Texans out of the market. And it's a pretty staggering statistic. So the cost really does make a difference. But we appreciate you guys working with us, and we look forward to continuing working with y'all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And unquestionably, we realize that every time we raise fees, it impacts what the value of the home is, which reduces the number of people. But I also think sometimes you can go through area by area and find ways to pick it up, and areas not to. And this just did it 100% over. So it is what it is. So with that, did we take a vote?
Can I clarify one thing on that motion? Are we making a motion to approve the entire list of permit fees right now?
Yes, we
As
are.
presented? Okay.
Because we understand they were negotiated that way.
Okay.
So remind me, did we vote?
We got a motion in a second.
And so we had public comment just then, so we're going to take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll go to item N. And item N,
Okay.
so item N is to consider appointment of Mayor Pro Tem and appointment of city council members to boards and commissions. And Julia, you're making the presentation?
Yes, just with the ending of the current terms for council members Hebert, Thomas, and Carter, there did open some positions on various boards. Some of those have end dates set by outside entities. So, for instance, the Concho River Water Master Advisory Committee, they've already set their own end date. So my recommendation would be if somebody's on a board with an outside term end date, that perhaps we leave them there. But we do need to take a look at some of the other boards, Audit Committee, Concho Valley Council of Governments General Assembly, the Investment Oversight Committee, Mayor Pro Tem, obviously, MHMR Nominating Committee, and then the Murphy Performance Hall. And then we do need to discuss if we do want to reinstitute the Ports to Plains backup. That was initiated in 2016, and then in 2017, we just left it as one appointment.
So, yeah.
So I'd like to just start with the Audit Committee.
We need to know where the mayor pro tem sits on some of these.
Well, the question is on the term end date. It says date of appointment was July 18th, 2017. Is it a 4-year term, 2-year term, 10-year term?
These are just for the appointment. So since Harry's original appointment to council has ended, then this would be for a new term.
Can we keep everything as is?
Unless there's an objection?
We could do that.
I'll start off.
Yeah,
Can I take it all at once?
I would.
Go for it.
And I would like to first say I was appointed Mayor Pro Tem 2 years ago, thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank y'all as council for letting me to have that opportunity. I know there's other people that would like the opportunity to do the same and have their turn at it. So at that point for Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to nominate Harry Thomas for Mayor Pro Tem, and I would make the motion to keep all boards and nominations as is unless objected.
Motion, is there a second?
I will second that. It's one of the most classy things I've ever seen done.
There you go. With that, any public comment? No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Do I need to say something about the backup for Ports to Plains?
If you guys want to keep that or reinstitute it, then the backup for the Ports to
We haven't had a
Plains.
backup to Ports to Plains.
And you discussed that in 2016, and it's not really a recognized position by Ports to Plains. But in 2016, it was important to the council that there be a backup that was officially named. So I don't know if that's important to this current council or not.
And
Does
if,
that need to be a part of the motion? You
I
made a
can,
motion.
I can make it to that, and if no objection, I kind of have a heart for that. Since
could
I went
amend
up
that.
to DC for Charlotte that 1 year, so if I can be allowed a backup,
Yep, I agree.
All right, with that,
I'll add that to the motion.
with that addition, so there's a motion, an addition, a second to the
Do
addition.
a second?
And any public comment? No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With no objections, motion passes 6-0. We will follow up on the rest of item 10. Consider approving the following board nominations. Keep San Angelo Beautiful, Sally. Sorry.
She is still here.
Sally's still here
She's
waiting
still
for us. With SMD 6 to a first full term ending September 2021. May I have a motion?
I make a motion, Mayor.
Miss Mayor.
Miss Master.
Yeah, Miss Master of the Ceremonies. Is there a
Second.
Second. Second. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll all take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. We will discuss in consideration of July meeting schedule. I would strongly suggest we have the meeting on July 2nd, as it would normally be
We'll be
done.
out of town.
Because, yeah, that way, City Hall, because they have off for the 4th, that 5th, and they'd have to come back and do City Council the following Tuesday. So I think we're good to do it on July 2nd and be done with it. So if that's okay, keep it to our regular schedule. Okay, budget workshops and tax hearings. I think we got notification on these budget workshops. I think were sent to us by Becky Dunn. So
Yes.
everyone should have those. So we'll accept those as we were notified. And now, announcements and consideration of future
Mayor?
agenda items are, yes, ma'am.
There was just one concern with that. Monday, September 2nd is a Labor Day holiday. And last year on September 3rd, we were asked to move that meeting, but it had passed the posting deadline for budget for the tax hearing. So I just need confirmation right now that everybody's okay to meet Tuesday, September the 3rd, following Labor Day.
I think it was a problem last year. Are you okay with it?
I'm good.
Everybody okay? All right, leave it September the 3rd. All right, then take announcements and consideration of future agenda items. D, are there any? With none, we'll move for an adjournment. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. We are officially adjourned at 2:33 p.m.